graciousness, love, and peace and prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. So because it's our sixth Global View on Key for 2024, and we are really going to have a great conversation tonight with you, our Q family listeners and friends of the Dominica Worldwide on live radio and on Facebook and on YouTube. And with you, my distinguished guests tonight, Dr. Irving Andre, Dr. T.C. McDonald Thomas, Pastor Wilberton Robin, Mr. Clint Roll, Mr. Janet David, Mr. Jean-Francois, Mr. Wilworth Robin. A very, very warm welcome to all of you distinguished gentlemen. Now, here are a few of my questions I'm going to pose tonight as we start, but I will leave the rest to you, my more learned colleagues on the panel tonight, and to you, our callers and listeners and viewers. Here's one of the few of those questions. Is there a comprehensive plan for the airport development project 2 years plus after land acquisitions and construction commence? And what is the real cost of that project? Will $1.3 billion complete it as was indicated initially? The government told Dominicans no money will be needed from the Treasury to fund the project because the funds will come from the CBI project and will be front-loaded by the project developer. But millions of dollars have since been spent and paid from the Treasury. But why did the developer not front-load those payments? And why did not the developer front-load the full payment of the market values of the land to the people whose lands have been acquired and others that may still be acquired in the area in the future? Where are the unaccounted $6 billion CBI dollars? What is likely to be the situation if the airport project is not continued to completion due to technical, financial, or other problems? Will the landowners be able to move legally to get their land back due to the failure to use the land for the purpose for which it was acquired? Or are the Chinese providing some form of financial guarantee and could simply take over the project? Who is actually financing the airport project now? As we speak, is the money available right now to pay all of the landowners? Is it? Why not just pay them? Are the technical, financial, and market studies for the airport project completed more than 2 years after government first declared it? And what is the situation as regards the location and construction of major access roads to and from the completed project? Considering the nature of the terrain in that area, will the situation of these roads have any negative impacts potentially on the community? Are plans afoot for building underground tunnels? You've heard about that, from steep slopes or under existing roads or rivers. Any roads going to be passing under those? Is that still a part of the plan? We don't know. Maybe somebody might tell us. Will that airport be built within the set time frame? So we know you might say $1.3 billion because it's going to be built in 5 years, but then suppose it takes 10 years, will it be 1.3? Is the Dominica Airport Company headed by a CEO and a chairman now missing in action? Has that board of that company been meeting over the past 12 months? Have they met at all in 12 months? Have they taken any decisions that the community needs to know about? Is that Dominica Airport Company ensuring that during construction of the project, Dominicans are employed and skills are transferred to Dominicans at all levels to enhance local construction capacity? And why are the residents in the area of the construction site being subjected to undue noise levels, dust, asphalt, concrete plant toxic fumes that may be health hazards? Can this be avoided? What can be done to mitigate against that? Were these environmental impact assessment studies done? And were solutions provided in there? Where are the studies? My distinguished guests, Dr. Irving Andre, T.C. McDonald Thomas, Wilberton Robin, Clint Roll, Sir David, Jean-Francois Wilworth Robin, who's also an engineer. All residents, and they're all residents and landowners of Wesley, and who are extremely concerned about the developments in the Wesley area with respect to the non-payment for lands acquired by the government They may also be concerned about the health issues, as we spoke about, and the pollution arising from the construction activities. They'll tell us about it, including asphalt and batch plant, potentially asphalt and batch plant operations at the proposed airport site. I expect that they will tell us what action they are taking to secure their interests and get equitable compensation for their lands and buildings and farms that are under acquisition. But here are some even a few more questions. And these are very important questions. Does the legal term eminent domain, which is what is being used to acquire these properties, does that legal term mean financial death to landowners of Wesley, of Woodford Hill and surroundings? Does it mean underpaying Wesley people so that whoever you want to call those people, Fan True or whoever, can make plenty money thereafter somehow on the backs of the locals? Does it involve depriving the people of their ancestral lands? Does it mean giving away huge chunks of arable agricultural lands to any smooth-talking mamagaya that comes along and say, hey, I'll give you $6 or $8 or whatever dollars per square foot? Does it make allowances for decisions that may be driven by political expediency and incompetence in the absence of proper planning? Where is the plan? All this speaks to the imperative, of course, for appropriate urgent reform of Dominica's electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations to ensure free and fair elections on a level playing field. Why? Because elections have consequences. Tainted elections result in bad consequences, such as a failed economy, lack of bona fides investments, an education system on life support for non-payment of student university fees being the order of the day, inadequate healthcare on full display, escalating crimes, poor policing, murders remaining unsolved, guns stolen from police stations, a limping justice system that is now on trial, devastated local businesses, farms, and agriculture as a whole, dwindling agribusiness and manufacturing, fake corrupt ambassadors reigning supreme, legal problems from foreign offshore companies and investors, glaring international airport construction, technical and financial issues, incomplete white elephant five-star hotels, a geothermal energy project in disarray, declining social values and moral decay, nasty business openly on full display at high levels. While sporting activities like community playing fields, like in Calibishi, and hosting West Indies cricket and other sports events continue to be casualties. We are now constantly reminded of the pain of divisive, tainted politics and governance failures after the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, advised against tainted elections. But who cares? Who cares? No law, no constitution is the world boss order of the day. So we must question the widely perceived, closely guarded, secret process of rewriting the new electoral laws and regulations. The people must first approve all new draft laws and regulations before they are tabled in Parliament for passage into law. And also, I believe it is timely to condemn alleged corruption in the CBI program and the chains that continue to imprison Dominicans for years due to electoral machinations, absence of justice, and lack of good governance. So tonight, my friends or listeners, we hear from the people of Wesley area, whose voices are getting louder and more unified every day, demanding what is rightfully theirs, standing up for justice and equity in their own community, in their own country. We seek the necessary legal opinions as to the way forward for the people to get what is rightfully theirs. We will make suggestions as to where Dominica should go from here to see Dominicans prosper, rather than continue to see more land grabbing by foreign nationals, millions of dollars being sent out of the country by foreign contractors and workers, while Dominica's entrepreneurs and our very talented youth being displaced and losing the heritage as they stand aside and look. Meantime, we are already witnessing and feeling the effects of declining passport sales revenues from the CBI program. Will it prove to be problematic for the government to pay public officers and NEP workers on time beyond the carnival season? And so, why must our local bank provide guarantees for millions of dollars for a very wealthy US firm to build a geothermal energy project that may not necessarily be feasible or sustainable in the end? It is imperative that we embrace national unity now, all hands on one deck, to secure good caring governance in our nature isle and enable us to make ourselves truly economically independent after 45 years of self rule. So, yes, we are witnessing a decline in personal and household incomes, less land and home ownership for Dominicans, less living wage employment, and we see escalating crime and economic devastation. It is high time. I believe it is high time for change in governance, which is sustained practice, standard practice in other jurisdictions in real democracies. Dominicans are really feeling a painful pinch in their pockets. So tonight, my distinguished guest, Dr. Irving Andre, is a TC McDonald Thomas, Dr. Thomas, Pastor Robin, Mr. Clint Roll, Mr. Jenny David, the Jean Francois, and Willis Robin, and you all cherished listeners or viewers and callers. You will make the case for the mobilization of Dominicans throughout the length and breadth of Dominican globally, with multitudes of strong, crystal clear voices demonstrating the people's power, demanding that the rights of the people of Wesley be respected and restored. This now appears to be the only way to bring back good governance, to fix the economy, to restore respect to Dominica's devastated image and reputation that has been caused by corrupt passport transactions and major due diligence failures. So we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, stay with us on our radio, television frequencies in Dominica, on our live stream on the internet, on Facebook, on YouTube platforms, and have your say as you do every Tuesday on the Global View on Q with me, Mr. G, only on Q95, the big station. Now, huge shout out, usual huge shout out, hugs and love and appreciation, and a big thank you to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, our teachers and doctors and nurses, and public and private sector patriots at home and abroad. We welcome every Dominican and every friend of Dominica into the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Again, I say thank you, Sherwin, keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, doing well on the console, as usual at Q95, directing the traffic. We will take your calls a bit later. The people's voice is always a priority on the Global View. Call us anytime in the program, and Lambi, he likes to take your calls. So he will signal us to take your call whenever you call. So let's get started. You have the first word in getting the ball rolling in our conversation tonight, Dr. Andre, with your opening presentation. And then let's have a great Dominican family conversation tonight about taking meaningful actions now for the future of our beloved homeland and the future of the upcoming young generations. And we'll focus to an extent on the problems of the people of Wesley tonight. As I yield to you, Dr. Andre, maybe you can tell us what are their legal rights, on how must they proceed to get their deserved rights and justice in their community. And if you have had a chance, in fact, to listen to to Size on the side to Size Calypso, which was apparently caused a little stir in some circles, you maybe should share any preliminary thoughts that you may have on that matter in the middle of the Calypso season, of course, and indeed on the eve of the grand 2024.
Yes, let me say good evening to you, Mr. G, and let me say good evening to the panelists. Let me also say good evening to Sherwin, to Lambi, to your listeners, your devoted listeners. Let me say good evening to all those who hope and aspire and cherish the joys of a free working democracy in their country of origin. Let us say good evening to those who hope in silence and who hope in clear expression of their views. This whole question as to the threat to a Calypsonian who spoke of selective prosecution by the DPP, quite frankly, is a sensitive measure of the existential threat to free expression we have right here in Dominica. I think we have to look at the broad context of this utterance. and I didn't hear the words attributed to the DPP, but I certainly heard the words of the Calypso, which allegedly drew her ire. You may note, or you may have noted, Mr. G, that in recent times, over the last few years, many persons regarded by all and sundry as government operatives have launched a vicious attack on certain Calypsonians, certain songwriters, more particularly Pat Aaron, who was honored just recently, yesterday to be exact, and more particularly the Dice. But there are others, and this is well orchestrated. One operative recently said that Calypso has been weaponized, I guess, against the political directorate. Where was he when one of the acolytes sang a song with the lyrics, "Nu Pavle Minister Borga" or something to that effect? Was it weaponized then? Was it weaponized in the past? When some of these self sale acolytes who preach a gospel of subservience, when in a prior life they were very objective and critical of what's happening in the political firmament. So, this is an orchestrated attack, quite frankly. It's an indication as to the death or the apparent or the imminent death of freedom of expression or freedom of association as guaranteed by the constitutional right, by the Constitution. So that when we hear suggestions that somehow the prosecutorial office has some issues with a particular song, that is to say, a suggestion that the prosecution of persons is selective, and to the extent that what I heard is correct, that there is some threat of legal action. Legal action on what basis? The office of the DPP nulliprosed the case after receiving a letter or letters from lawyers who were involved in a case in which the CCJ sent back the case involving electoral petitions back to the magistrate's court for trial. Those persons who were seeking to prosecute government ministers, if my information is correct, include, for example, Simon, former Attorney General of Antigua, who certainly knows a thing or two about criminal law, and yet the case was nulliprosed because the office of the DPP concluded that the evidence fell far short of that is required to launch a prosecution. Well, we all know the decision stunk and reeked of political interference. And there are other cases, Mr. G, over the years. Take, for instance, Gone Emmanuel. It may have been a different DPP then, but what happened was clear. Despite a confession, which is typically what police enforcement look for in any particular case, a confession, they found a blatant and dishonest way not to prosecute those who allegedly were involved in the attempted murder, firebombing of Gone Emmanuel. And there are other cases which raises serious questions and concerns about the criteria for prosecuting certain individuals. So, to the extent that the Calypsonian Psi make reference to what appears to be apparent selectivity in prosecution, this is a matter of grave public interest. He has a right to comment about these things because it's a matter of public interest. But more than that, it's a matter of public safety. Because if you, Mr. G, you allegedly were involved in an arson of a senior person like a former chief magistrate, and someone confesses to be involved in it and nothing happened, my question to you is, what message is being sent to those who seek to take the law into their own hands if, in the appropriate case, the persons who were alleged to be involved in these types of deeds are not prosecuted? So, this is a matter of grave public concern, and a Calypsonian has a right to raise this as a pressing social issue. He has a right to do so. So this suggestion that somehow why he should change his lyrics, give me a break. It's a matter of pressing public concern. It's a matter which is worthy of public comment because it threatens the very fabric of a democratic society, which is the protection of the safety of the public. So, in my view, this is legitimate and legitimate area for focus for a Calypsonian who, ironically, is talking about law and order in that calypso. He's talking about, quite frankly, the insidious situation where those involved in crime, quite frankly, appear to go, or many of those, not all, unpunished, and the repercussions of that state of affairs. So he is being an advocate of law and order. He is being a protector of public safety. And you still were talking about if it's true about prosecuting, not prosecuting, but suing this Calypsonian for being an advocate of public safety. We live in troublous times. Everything is upside down. And this is another indication that things are indeed upside down. In my respectful view, there's nothing for Sai to apologize about. He is not advocating for lawlessness. On the contrary, he has been an apostle of good. And the threat of some type of, say, I hope it's wrong. I hope I'm wrong. The threat of a potential lawsuit is hanging over his head. I hope this is just the Calypso season where persons speak in jest, because quite frankly, there's no basis for this. And this is just, in my view, the latest piece of evidence of the attack by certain individuals against specific Calypsonians. You see, it is people decry, oh, it's politicized. But for them, it's only politicized when the subject of the Calypso is seemingly against the government. So when they speak of Calypso being politicized or weaponized, those who utter those words speak with a forked tongue because they love it. When, for example, there's an attack against Pat Aaron, they love it. When there's an attack against the dice, they love it. When Soul Puss is, for some unknown reason, um, eliminated from the quarterfinals, for God's sakes, oh, they love it because this is an orchestrated attack, irrespective of the rhetoric, against any type of dissent, whether from a Calypsonian, whether from a journalist, whether from say, any other person in the public sphere, whether from a person on the pulpit. The intent is the same: to stifle and to muzzle legitimate criticism of the body politic. And quite frankly, we as a democratic society, we who cherish law and order, should not countenance it. These are my comments, Mr. G.
Well, and thank you so much for the opening comments. And I'm pretty sure that you will have further comments when we begin to speak about the land situation in Wesley. You'll give us your opinions on those. I want to turn now to Jenna, because I understand that, Jenna, you're the man who is the chairperson, the coordinator of the Concerned Cities Committee, isn't that right? And therefore, you have a leading role to play in galvanizing this support. So it's important for me to ask you to lead the discussion now, and then we'll get the other people involved. But basically, give us an idea of what is really going on down there, and why is it necessary for you to take the kind of action that your group is taking to preserve the rights and the interests of the people of Wesley and to get justice for your just cause. Jenna, you can open your mic now and let's get going.
Before I begin, let me say thank you, Mr. G and Q95, for giving us this opportunity to have this conversation. Good evening to Dr. Andre, the other panelists. We have Lambi and Showin. I'm Jenna David, and I'm quite happy to be here. Well, a few years ago, over 3 years ago, the government came to us and said that they were acquiring our property for the purpose of an international airport. After negotiations, homes were built for some people, but a few of us agreed to be paid and given another lot where we were to be relocated, bearing in mind that we were asked to surrender our original title in order to get paid. I, for one, built my home nearly 2 years ago, and some others who built before me, but we built with a generator. From the time up to this day, we have not received a certificate of title, which was promised within 6 months. We have yet to receive electricity, cable. Neither do we have proper access roads to that new location. Since then, we have been trying to get to the government side to address those issues. In the beginning, we were simply told that they were working on it. After that, we were hardly able to get through to them via telephone. There are persons who still have not received compensation for their homes. There are many persons who still have not received compensations for their farmlands, which have been occupied by the Chinese. There are those who still have not received compensation for their crops. There is a dust problem throughout the village. So we are here because we are tired. We are tired with all the questions but no answers. We are tired of the abuse and the disrespect that has been displayed onto the Western people coming from the government side. So that's why we are here, Mr. G, basically.
Yes, and I'm sure you're going to take the opportunity to tell us all of the details, because there are individuals that are, I'm sure, suffering more than others. There may be some people who have already received compensation for the land. There may be some people who have been relocated. I'm not sure whether some of those people who have been relocated have the necessary utilities that will allow them to live a reasonable life. I'm not even sure that they have a title yet that they can use to maybe borrow money to build on these homes or whatever it is that put their homes on those portions of land. So you'll tell us all about it. But let me go over now to Pastor Robin. Give us an idea of what you think is really going on there. Do you think really that the people of Wesley are really receiving the justice that they duly deserve in this matter? Because it seems to me, whereas it may not be everybody complaining, but certainly there are quite a number of people who seem to have some issues. And I saw the last meeting that you had in Wesley a few nights ago. To my mind, that meeting was very well attended. And I was a little surprised, because at first I was under the impression that most of the Wesley people were quite satisfied with the situation. But what I'm getting now, the feedback I'm getting, is that there are quite a number of people who are really not satisfied at all. what is happening, they would like to become, and even people who have been compensated, some of them may now be thinking, boy, the $8 they gave me there, should it have been 15? So let me hear from you, Pastor. See if you can add something to help us clarify some of these issues. So you can just go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. G, and to my distinguished panelists here, Dr. Andre, and my brother here, the controls. I'm here to lend my support. Actually, you can see I put my title in parentheses because a lot of people are of the opinion that as a minister of the gospel, I should not be involved in trumping the cause of my people. And I say to myself, why not? You know, I take my cue from people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King and Bishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa, who stood up for their people, and hence the reason why in some of those places we can enjoy the privileges that we enjoy today. What we saw at the meeting on Sunday, I believe, is a tip of the iceberg of the dissatisfaction. The turnout doesn't really represent the level of dissatisfaction among the people, because for the most part, a lot of people are afraid to show their faces in public because they're afraid that they would be victimized. And it has been evidenced in our community that whenever you stand up and speak up, that you are victimized. I have cases of people who have come to me and personally shared their grievances in that regard. So I believe one of the reasons why we're here today is because of the level of disrespect, in my opinion, that is being displayed in this whole process. From the very get-go, while we were being told that the government wanted access to view the land, the lands were already in the process of being acquired. So I think that's really unjust, and any system that is based on unfairness will eventually crumble. The Word of God says righteousness exalts a nation. That is a principle. The principle of justice and equity and righteousness is something that elevates. And whenever we move away from that standard, we are exposing ourselves to moral decay. And I believe at the core of this thing is really the presence of injustice and the people were taken advantage of. And I'm saying, as a minister of the gospel, I cannot in any respectful way sit back and come to the church on a Sunday morning or during the week and minister to people from a spiritual perspective and not address a thing that I believe is affecting their lives. Because I am one of those who believe that church should not only be involved in spiritual matters, because man is a whole being, is spirit, soul, and body. And if my parishioners are dissatisfied or they're disgruntled over the fact that their properties are being taken without due compensation, it's a problem for me, you know. And so that's why I'm lending my voice to this, and I'm lending my voice in a strong way. I will not water down my position and what I have to say and how I get involved in this process, because these are my people. This is my community. I'm from here. I was born here. I was raised here. And I love this community. That's why after living in the US for over 20 years, I decided to come back, myself and my wife, and to reestablish ourselves in this community, because I believe there is great value here that needs to be developed. And it would be very remiss of me to sit back and allow my people to be taken advantage of and not lend a voice to the process. Yeah.
Well, certainly. I mean, this is what it's all about. I mean, this is what community is about. I mean, remember, it always took a village to raise a child. I mean, there was this thing called Kudme we used to have in Dominica at one time. This was the fabric of our community. So the basis for relations, you know, and when the kids were out there and they did something wrong, whoever saw them would go to the parents and report it, and they would take remedial action. It was people really working for people and looking out for each other. It seems to me this is what made Dominica what it is, and we need to ensure that we maintain that. And if we're losing it, we need to bring it back. But I wanted to go to Clint. Clint, let's talk about this a little bit more. We'll come back to everybody, and we're going to have a very open conversation later on. But I want to give everybody a chance to make some opening remarks and indicate where they see they want to focus on what aspect of this thing, because ultimately, I think the idea is for the powers that be, the authorities, to do the right thing. And there's people who they acquire the land, they should compensate them for it. This talk about people not having title, that should just go out of the window. That nobody should even talk about that anymore. I mean, it's easy to prove who has been in possession of those lands for generations. And there's no point depriving the young people of their rightful, properties, because somebody says, oh, you don't have a title. That's not true. I mean, Dr. Andre, when he comes back in, I'm sure he will speak to that matter again. He started talking to it, but certainly there's case study to show, even if you don't have a title, once you can show that you've been, in possession of that land for generations, you really, have you have ownership of it, and you should get compensated for it if it has to be purchased from you. It is a very weak excuse to say some people haven't got titles, therefore, because the majority of landowners in Dominica don't have titles. That's a fact. Clint, can we get something from you on some of this?
Yes, good evening, Dominica. Good evening to all the people tuning in tonight. First off, I want to say I'm kind of elated because there are two gentlemen in the panel I grew up with. That would be Mr. McDonald, Dr. McDonald Thomas, and Mr. Jenna David. I remember I used to be a kid around them, and it's kind of ironic that now we share the same opinions about our communities. I also have Mr. Robin, both of them, they are my cousins. So we're well represented. Mr. Jean-Francois is another good Wesley person. But my real urge about what is happening in Wesley as to the way we appreciate from the state what is really going on. It is very questionable. The whole idea that we are now moving from, I would say, one social aspect to another, in the sense that we were once landowners. We are the children of landowners. And today, it seems, if I must say it like that, we are going into a direction where we're going to become squatters. And for me, that is something which is very questionable. Also, I'm a person who thinks that people should be given value for their property. And based on the information on the ground, based on all the utterances from the people who got paid, you can almost hear it in the wind. They're not satisfied. As Pastor Robin just said, some of them are hiding, and that's another sad situation. And on top of all this, the people whom we expect to do better, to develop the people of Wesley, to me, they are taking advantage of the situation. And that is one of the things that really get me involved, It's not only, this didn't start last week or last month. For me, this started way back, and I've been paying attention to the developments in my society. One of the things I want to say before I turn the mic, I believe in respect and leadership. But when leadership becomes questionable, it changes me to the extent that I listen to my prime minister talking about $15 million. Isn't that too much or enough money to spend in Wesley? The question I have tonight is, on behalf of the people from Wesley, would be, what is the value of the home you live in compared to the money you're about to spend in Wesley at present? That's one of the main questions I want to ask my PM tonight. How comfortable you feel to come with 15 million to disseminate to almost a whole village? Did you forget the value of the place you live in? Do you want to be that person all high and mighty over everybody else? Do you want to see people just dragging around the place? That would be my main question. And I'm almost very sure, Mr. G, that a lot of people from the village never really sit back or stop for a while to think about where these people have found themselves and where they're about to put us. And I will say that is one of the main things of all other things. That, what I just said, is my driving point. That's what put me in the race to be agitating for my society, because I love my village. I love Dominica. And I will say, like everybody else here, we can leave tomorrow and go away to the US or to Europe or Canada and live, and maybe don't even come back. But that's not how I see life. And there's a lot more I'll talk about as the meeting, as the panel, everybody goes on. But that will be my driving point for the night, especially to my PM. How do you see yourself tonight, PM? Think of the value of your home compared to the amount of money you're waving, dangling in the face of Wesley people. That's where I'll stop for now until I come back on the mic.
Yes, I believe we have a clip of the Prime Minister's statement on that matter. I don't know whether Lambi has it queued up, but if Lambi, do you have it queued up? If you have it, then maybe you can run it for us now before I go to Dr. TC. Lambi, you can go ahead and run it so you can hear it.
Several property owners will receive payments during the course of this week. Once they can present the original copy of their title, for the properties. That will include persons who negotiations have been concluded. This is not the entire list, but paying out $15 million to property owners this week is certainly good news for many property owners who have been waiting, and we want to express our gratitude to them for their patience and understanding. And so we'll be making those payouts during the course of this week. That will leave us maybe with less than $15 million outstanding to pay out to property owners in the Wesley area for the construction of the International Airport. I mean, I must say that in all of my interaction with the residents and the property owners, I mean, it's been exceptional. I have no complaints, obviously. If their payments are delayed, people will become anxious, especially if they want to move on with some of the plans that they have. So I understand the expression of anxiety and concern with regards to the delay of payments and so forth. But we all know that these things can become intricate in terms of the extended negotiation processes and the various legal steps one has to take. Of course, one has to contend with the availability funds at a particular time and how much you can pay at any given time. But we're making payments of over $15 million during the course of this week to property owners, and I know several individuals and families will receive substantial payouts this week. $15 million circulating in one village in the country is not an insignificant amount.
Dr. Thomas, you just heard the Prime Minister. You see, we heard Clint talk about this. He mentioned this, and then you just heard the Prime Minister in his own words saying that all of these interactions with the people of Wesley, things are good, everybody happy. I did not get that impression when I listened to the last public meeting that Jenna was chairing. I did not get the impression that everybody was happy. Also, I heard the Prime Minister say that he talked about the availability of funds, and he was waving $15 million in, saying that's a lot of money to put in that community. I'm wondering whether this $15 million, whoever it is who did this report and gave him, whether they've taken consideration of the real value of those properties, the real value of those properties, that the real market value of those properties. And the other thing that I was very concerned about in that statement is, I remember when the Prime Minister first came to the public and he said, listen, Dominicans have to spend a cent for this thing. No money from the Treasury. We have the developer. He's going to front load this money. This thing might cost about $1.3 billion or more. This man is going to front load this thing. No money will come from the Treasury. And yet I'm just wondering, well, why is it a problem? Because part of the cost of the project has to be paid for the lands, because you have to acquire the land to be able to put the project on it. So why isn't the developer front loading the payments to the landowners? And then what I find strange too is that I'm not hearing any professional, assessors in this thing and say, no, this is what the assessors have done. I'm just hearing like casual conversations. When I went to people, they were okay, no problem, everybody was happy. And then but I mean, Dr. Thomas, let's get real. This is people's real life, This land, that's people's lives. I remember the days when the people of Wesley, they were doing so well. They were able to use their land, get wealthy so they could build their homes. They could buy their transport and pay cash for it. You cannot tell me that you're going to undervalue these people's land and their property that they've worked so hard to develop for years, fed their families, build their homes, send their children to school. And now that their kids have grown up and they become somebody from the toil of their parents, you're going to tell them you want to disenfranchise them now by taking away their lands and don't adequately compensate them for it. I thought the purpose of having a parliamentary representative for a constituency was to look after the interests of the constituents. Just like we had Pastor Robin, he's saying, look, you cannot stand there and don't look after the interests of the people. Dr. Thomas, give me your thoughts on some of those issues there. You need to unmute your mic, yeah.
Mr. G, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to come on here to voice of concern. Good evening to the panelists, Dr. Andre, and the Q family. Indeed, this is a global program. And so, good evening to all the listeners, the people of Wesley and the people of Dominica. Mr. G, I'll start off by saying this. The Land Acquisition Act is nothing new. It's not a new piece of legislation. It's not a new document. In fact, this act was written back in 1966, reviewed several times up to 1986. So it's not an act that's new where people would not understand it and there would be problems in understanding how it was laid out. And even so, if someone is given the responsibility to carry out the process, in this case, of establishing a project such as an international airport, that they would review the act to find out what the process is and how to go about dealing with the people who will be affected by the project. Although the act is antiquated in its nature, it's a pretty old piece of legislation. The fact is, it lays out a process that seems pretty easy to follow. And a lot of the problems that we're having now is because the people who were given the task to start this project, the foundation that was laid to start up this project was faulty. It was flawed. They started at the back and now they are moving to the front. You don't go to people. First of all, you don't acquire people's property without letting them know. And there are people on this panel, I believe, Jean, Wilworth, Pastor Cameron, and myself, at the onset, along with the lawyer, Mr. Bianzi, were the ones actually notifying the people of the community that their lands were acquired. They didn't know. So this process started in a really backward way, and one might even say in a secretive way, because no one knew what was going on. And I will continue to say that up till today. Seemingly nobody knows what's going on. No one seems to know what's going on. You gather a piece of information here and there. People have been very speculative on what's going on because they just don't know. I believe that the level of disrespect that has prevailed during this process is unprecedented. Unprecedented. The powers to be, the people that are supposed to be looking out for the citizens in our society, have failed us miserably. They've came in, they've just bulldozed whatever it is they had to do, and they've paid absolutely no respect to the people by advising them of what's going on. And there has also been a level of untruths. I can just call it plain out lies. One of it is that they have relocated, they've built houses to relocate people for that were affected by the building of the airport. And that's not so. The houses that were built at Manbury were not built to relocate people from the airport site. I remember there was a meeting at the Northeast Comprehensive with the late Mr. Timmons, who since passed away, talking about the housing revolution. And those houses were built as part of the housing revolution. So they were not intended to be built for people to be resettled from the airport. It just happened to coincide with what they were doing at the time. But even more than that, it is now being said that the people that were relocated to the area where the former government had acquired for the initial airport, that they were asking to go to that location. Now, let me just back up a little bit and be clear. In our initial, I'm going back to 2020, because my letter to my property was issued in September of 2020. And that was actually the second letter because the first letter was incorrect and had to be, I gave it back to them so that they could correct it. Back then, they were issuing type letters to people that their property were acquired. That's after we had let people know that the property had been acquired. So they had not even done that. That simple step was actually not even done properly. But the people that they sent to Manbury, to the Joe Button area that they're boasting about, back in 2020, we were asking, and Mr. David Edwards was also on that in that group. We were asking for reasons why the airport could not be built at the original site. And up till today, no professional, no one in a professional capacity having the knowledge to do with airports and the building of airports and what the FAA requirements were and all of that stuff, had ever come out professionally and explained to the community why it was that they were going to, in my view, demolish a community to build an airport without explaining why it is they were not building at that former location. That has never been done. So I'm not sure if it's by spite. I am not sure if it's deliberate. I am not sure what the rationale is. But it seems to me that something is amiss, that you would just come into a community and just start bulldozing the community, breaking down houses. And then it's compounded by you start a project while there are people in the middle of the construction project. So you are building a project around people that you intend to move, a school that you supposed to have moved. Anyone with common sense would know that if you're going to build such a major project, two of the first things that you would do is, one, you establish a community where you can relocate people that are going to be on the construction site. And two, that something like a school that is there, you would make provisions as to where you're going to locate that school. And even number three, you would ensure that the roads that's going through that project has some sort of detour, so that people are not driving through the project, but that there is a detour that goes around that road to ensure that the project is away from the main road or the main part of the village. So none of these seem to have been taken into consideration. So when someone looks at this project, basically what it looks like, it's a fly-by-night, wake up in the morning, thought of project. There seems to have been no forethought that went into this project before it got started. And so looking at the Land Acquisition Act and the process that it lays out that officials are supposed to follow, it seems to me that someone threw it in the garbage bin and just decided, we'll do as we want, we'll take this any step we want. And this explains in large part to where we are at this stage, where people are having issues getting paid, people are having issues in getting resettled, infrastructure is not in place for people who have resettled, and people who are requesting lands are getting no responses. People who were issued lands are getting no titles. So it's ironic that the Prime Minister would come out to say that people will get paid if they can provide titles to their property, when they are issuing property to people with no titles. And finally, let me say this on my opening comment. All this talk about money, I'm under the impression that we have a new Minister of Finance, Dr. McIntyre. Where is he? Because I have not heard a peep from the Finance Minister. I don't know if this too is above his pay grade, as was said some time back. But it would seem to me that the Finance Minister should be involved, and he should take some responsibility or all the responsibility for compensation, because he's the one that's supposed to be dealing with the money. So what is his role? Is he just someone that goes to Parliament and give a glowing remark about the state of the economy, which seems to be illusionary? I'm not sure. But he, as the Finance Minister, should be at the forefront of this whole thing, and no one, absolutely no one, is hearing his name called or hearing anything from him. I will stop here for now, Mr. Chief.
Yes, and Dr. Andre, thank you, Dr. TC, for that. Dr. Andre, I want to bring you in here now, because you see, we're coming into the business of the eminent domain. And I'm hearing these complaints and these concerns from Dr. Thomas that things don't seem to have gone very well. It doesn't look like things were organized. What is in terms of your knowledge of the law and what is supposed to be happening in those cases, and the whole question of the statement by the Prime Minister that people who don't have titles may not get paid. Can you give us a little bit of advice and direction on this matter, Dr. Andre? And you don't want to unmute your mic if you're hearing us. I'm not so sure Dr. Andre is hearing us because I think his mic, I'm not sure Dr. Andre is properly, because we had lost him for a minute and he's gone back out now and now he's back in, but I don't think he's properly logged in. So we'll wait for Dr. Andre to get properly logged in. Maybe Sherwin and Lambi will help us to get the word to Dr. Andre that he needs to, or maybe he's getting the word now. So I see Dr. Andre, you're with us. You have to unmute your mic if you're hearing me.
I heard the presentations of your fellow panelists, and
Yeah.
this is a national concern. Let me put it in within a certain type of historical context. When the UWP acquired lands from persons in the area in anticipation of building an airport, they made it their priority to compensate those whose lands had been obtained or acquired. In fact, so much so that a lawyer called Tony Astafan was quoted in, I believe, the Dominica Chronicle, or at least another national newspaper, how pleased he was that the troubling or vexing question of compensation for people's lands had been dealt with by the UWP. The government may have an authority under a doctrine called eminent domain to help itself to private lands for public uses and purposes, but the government has an obligation to act reasonably. They cannot do so with impunity. And that's the problem. They cannot decide to take their time in deciding whether or not to compensate people. And the whole question of title, if I understand it correctly, is nonsensical. You have people who've owned land and cultivated land who've been utilizing the land for generations. One, whether it's the Robin family, whether it's the Leon family, and so on, the whole village know that this land say tear this person or tear this family. So for government to help itself to the land of persons who have owned, who have worked the land, and then to turn around and say, well, you don't have any paper title, therefore you will not receive compensation. This is nothing short of highway robbery. The government should set the standard in terms of due compensation for persons whose lands are being utilized, whether it's for the airport or to provide accommodation for the foreigners who are involved in building the airport. It is absolutely an insult that years after those acquisitions, certain persons haven't been compensated, whether for the actual land, whether for the crops. This is something quite fun. If you are not concerned, if you are not prepared to launch some type of demonstration, which is your right, constitutionally guaranteed right, to protect your own property, your home, your house. Your parents live there. Perhaps your grandparents live there also, where you raised your children, where you've grown some crops, vegetables, whatever in your backyard and so on. Where you've stood inside of a window and greeted your neighbors, where you have enjoyed quiet quiet enjoyment of your own property. If that does not motivate you to stand up for your rights, then what will? Quite frankly, why should you be a forlorn voice shouting in the wilderness with no one hearing or seeing? This is an affront to the people of Wesley. It's an affront to the people of Dominica. because development cannot be achieved at a cost of destroying the very fabric of your life as a nation, village life. It cannot and should not be the case. And I'll tell you what is cruelly ironic, Mr. G, is that there was a case arising out of Dominica a year or two ago in which the whole question as to whether someone who possesses a certificate of title, whether that person somehow has more rights or his rights or her rights have more legal validity than someone who acquired the life on account of a doctrine called adverse possession, who's been on that land continuously and uninterruptedly for decades. The CCJ was quite clear. Not having title doesn't disentitle you from making a claim or having a stake, a proprietary stake, a stake of possession, a stake of ownership in that land. I'm paraphrasing the decision, obviously. So that when at a time after the CCJ has recognized, based on a number of factors, legal and historical, that someone who may not have actual paper title to land still nevertheless has legal rights and entitlements to that property. Of a government allegedly saying we ain't gonna compensate you until you show some paper to that land. It's an abomination. You should ask that, what's the Trinidadian senator's name? You should ask him to comment on that phenomenon because it flies in the face of everything that's fair and just in any country. When you live in an island where, whether you call them country people or persons, quite frankly, who live outside of Roseau, they make their living through farming. They farmed the same piece of land for generations. And you're telling me that if you seize it, they don't deserve compensation because they don't have paper title. The whole thing, quite frankly, smacks of highway robbery. But that's why we have courts. These things should not be allowed to go on unchallenged. And there are persons who probably are fear of challenging these things because they fear that they will not get compensation. But if you do nothing, that is the surest way to ensure that you will not get compensation for your property. It's as simple as that. Persons, the Wesley people who've not been compensated, they deserve to be compensated, for God's sakes. But look at another aspect of this unpleasant situation. As we speak, Mr. G, there are foreigners inhabiting the property of some of those who have been dispossessed. There are foreigners who are occupying the properties of some of those who've not been compensated. There are foreigners who are occupying and even growing chickens and pigs on the property of those who have not been compensated. And these folk, Wesley folk, are being asked, Gasson, just take your licks in silence. Take your blows in silence. And that is happening at a time when certain government functionaries are giving or arrogating themselves salary increases of between 20 to 30%. And persons who've toiled on their own property for decades are not being given reasonable compensation after their lands were unilaterally taken away from them. There has to be a God somewhere, Mr. G, quite frankly, because this is a dark day in Dominica. And we should not, through our silence, countenance what's happening. It's just not right.
We have
Aren't
a,
you Dominican? Don't the
well,
people of Wesley who've been dispossessed, don't they have a voice? Don't they have rights in their own country? Don't they have the rights to peaceful enjoyment of their own property? And why is it that some of the lands that have been acquired by the government is not even lands, as far as I'm aware, and not even lands that will form part of the airport complex. Why is that? Why is that grab all of persons' lands? For whom are you grabbing? And where are these Wesley people going to live? On borrowed lands? Hopefully on lands to which they have title? Hmm? Are they going to be shunked off in some multi-apartment complex with no title? So that when they die, within 2 hours of their death, their relatives are thrown out of the apartment. Is that what you have waiting for them? I hope not. I hope I'm wrong.
Well,
Because the people of
Dr.
Wesley
Henrik,
have a right.
yes, I believe some people are trying to chime in. Lambi, you want to take a call now? You want to make sure that we hear the callers.
Yeah. There's a call on the line. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, good night, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
Okay, fine. How are you doing?
Good, taking it off life easy. Yeah, I'm listening to the conversation tonight there, and I'm sitting here. Well, I'm driving, but I'm listening carefully, and I don't think that's just my opinion. I think we have to blame ourselves before the consequences of that process we're going through now and the disadvantage to the Wesley people. I think we should blame ourselves first. And I think we should blame our representation, our representatives first. And I say so because from the moment there was, when they promoted that they were going to build that airport, I mean, I would believe that through proper representation, I mean, at the end of the day, some farmers don't know how to really manage land transactions. You understand what I'm saying? Some people in local palace not to acquire with this sort of thing. So I think there should have been a big drive to educate, and there should have been something to assist them to motivate or to facilitate the people getting independent surveyors to get the values of their land and not what government wants to give them, right? So at that point, it could be challenging. Now, when we talk about ownership, I'm sitting there, I'm saying what determines ownership besides the title? Because at the end of the day, you hear millions going into agriculture. So I'm sitting there asking myself, so was the government illegally facilitating an illegal process in handing state money to farmers who farming on lands or properties that they're not sure, the government is not sure belongs to them? You get my point, gentlemen? So that thing is not just about an airport. It's about a system where we don't promote accountability for what we have. And we have to use that scenario to tighten up for future. Because infrastructure development is a go-to for that government, for them to do what they do best. I am not going into that conversation. We all know what we're talking about. So I think we have to go on a drive to protect people in the future, not to end up in that dilemma right now. Besides dealing with a fact that is on the ground already, I think we have to use those indicators to make it our responsibility to make sure those things don't happen again. So I would encourage the opposition forces. If you want people to build confidence in you and a government and your government ethics, the most important thing is to protect people's interests. So why don't we go on a serious drive to make sure that people have what they have for their land, no matter where it is in Dominica? Because all of a sudden, you're hearing all what land can do because the government has technically sneaked in and lowball people or strategize on taking people's land, pending compensation. And another thing I cannot understand why the preliminary stage of building the airport is the first thing is to buy the land, to acquire the land. And I cannot understand why a developer is getting paid to do work on something that is not paid for. And the powers that be sit there and watch that happen. You understand what I'm saying, gentlemen? These things cannot happen in the States, you know. If you're interested in buying a property, you have to put down what they call earnest money. so that you can afford the transaction even before they start the transaction. Am I right, Mr. Gregor?
You're quite right, 100%. You're so right. You're
Yes,
so right.
I think what is happening here is just
Give me 1 second.
consequences. We're really dealing with consequences that could have been avoided. We sleep on it. The representatives were fast asleep when come to these people, and we can't trust their process because they have no process, they have no guidance, they keep about everything. There's no system in that country. So it's our responsibility to make sure from the back door that we do as much as we can to create a system that safeguards the interests of Dominican people. And that business about they getting $15 million is going to be in the economy in Wesley. $15 million should not be promoted as being in the economy in Wesley. It is to replenish what they had. It's not money to spend. So I think we even promoting, even after they get compensation, I think there's a deception in promoting what people should be doing in this field. People should be putting back themselves in a secure manner as they were before, with having assets and collaterals. It's not about money to spend in an economy. It's about regaining what it takes to protect their family interests and the dynasty and the family, the dynasty, the well-being of the family. So we have to be very careful how we talk, because words can motivate people to go a certain way. And if we create a talk that is a frustrating thing and people figure they just going to just cash out and just live life, and when they die, when the money finish, it's a bad thing. That is what will create poverty. That is what will create poverty. The misappropriation of a compensation for what was once an asset to a family. So we have to guide those people. We have to make sure that they're psychologically sound to be able to manage that money and put it back, if not perfect, but close to what it was before, in terms of reacquiring some other collaterals to keep the finances or the future of their family in order. Gentlemen, okay, but I don't want to stay too long, but it's a long and lengthy conversation, so I'll give some other people a chance. Have a good night.
No, and thanks a lot for your comments. I appreciate them. One of the things I'm hoping that that Will Worthfield will come and expand on some of that a little later on. But you see, Dr. Andre started talking about it already. All the people who have spoken already started talking about it. At this stage, really and truly, it is to look after the interests of the people now. It's not a matter of going and make any big. It is right now. The people have their concerns. One of the points that the caller just made is that how can you be developing the land that you have acquired from people even before you've paid them for it? How can people be on the land working and you haven't even paid the people for the land? I mean, and then of course to indicate that you're only going to spend $15 million and those who don't have title will not get money. I think that is an error, frankly, and I think that is something that needs to be corrected. And like in the Kalibishi situation, where the people have made comments and they said, we're not satisfied with what's going on, a school that's going to build on a playing field. We wanted to know, and I understand the PAL rep and the officials have met with those people and they're trying to take some decisions that will satisfy the community. I think the same thing would happen in Wesley. I'm not sure. I have not heard one person who's spoken so far. Maybe Jean-Francois will tell me whether in fact the PAL rep has made any effort to come to the people and say, listen, guys, we're in this together. I'm with you. I'm your representative. And so let us talk about what the problem is and let's see how we can rectify it. I will make representation on your behalf. I've not heard anybody say that. And I'm hoping it's not the opposite, in fact, that the PAL rep is taking a position contrary to that. And Lambi, if you have any calls, I will take them. But if you don't, I will go ahead. And I will go to Jean-Francois before. Okay, let's take a call before we go.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, good evening, Lambi. Good evening to the panel. To all the good people in the house and the listeners. Pastor Robin, thanks for your introduction. You kind of hit the nail on the head when you made the moral argument. You know, the moral argument, they become irrelevant of substance. It's a matter of that, whether it's right or wrong. And I think in many ways, it is the moral argument that is missing. That is why we are where we are. You know, this Prime Minister decisions are made on some impromptu kind of thing, on promises at election times. You know, you don't get things planned. So an airport will not occur in Dominica on the Roosevelt Skerrit like how any normal airport will occur. It will occur as it occurs on the Roosevelt Skerrit, and everything else on the Roosevelt Skerrit disorganized. The fundamental issue in Dominica is an issue of management. The entire managerial aspect of the government has been suspended by the management style of the Prime Minister. You understand? So everything is back to front. And so it's not an issue of whether you're on this red thing or this blue train or this kind of train anymore. It's not even a political issue anymore. It's not even it's an issue of Dominica. Dominica has a moral crisis right now, and it demands a moral response from its citizens in order to put an end to it. It's only a moral response that can put an end to this madness that is going on there. You understand? So I'm happy that you came and you made that point as to why you, on conscience, you have to get involved. And that is what it needs to take for more of us on conscience, because a lot of the things that are going on, they are beyond the conscience thing. Peace and blessings, brothers.
And thanks a lot for that. Thank you so much. Lamb, if you don't have a call right now, I want to just go on to Jean-Francois, because you can see, and I will, after that, before I go to Wilworth, I will want to acknowledge some of the comments that I've been getting on WhatsApp and the comments we see on Facebook. There are quite a few comments, there are quite a few people who are appreciating what we're doing and commenting on it. But Jean-Francois, let me just go to you to give us your comments at this time. Oh, he's not with us? Oh, he must have dropped off, because I don't think, is Jean there? No, I don't see Jean. All right, so maybe when he comes back in, I will ask Sherwin to look out for him. Maybe he's dropped off, and when if he tries to come in, Sherwin should try to stand by to admit him right away when he comes in. But Wilmoth, you've heard some of the comments. You've heard Dr. Andre, you've heard Dr. TC, you've heard Jenna, you've heard everybody. In your professional opinion, Jean, are you back with us now? Maybe, well, Wilmoth, maybe we'll go on and we'll come to Jean after you, let him get himself sorted out. But from a professional standpoint, as a civil engineer, you heard about the eminent domain. You heard what's been happening, and people are on the project. We don't know of environmental impacts assessment studies. We don't know of a real plan for the development. We don't know what is the situation in terms of roads that are going to be constructed, major roads to access the project, whether they're going to inconvenience the community in any way, whether they're going to cause disruption in the community life or in the agricultural life of the community. We don't know that. What are your thoughts in terms of the way the process is going forward? Because up to now, I have not seen a plan. I have not heard one. I don't know whether you have seen one. What are your thoughts on that? And then, of course, one of the things somebody said, they're not sure if an airport will ever be built there because the technical studies are up to now not yet completed. Understand? They still have to bore a lot of holes there and to determine exactly what is good. And how do you arrive at the cost of the project without completing all these technical studies? So we'll work, fella. Somebody's mic is open and we're getting some feedback from that. I'm not sure. All right, so Wilmoth, you go ahead.
All right, good night, everybody, and good night to all the listeners on Facebook, social media, and on Q95. It's good to be here tonight with all these gentlemen that I'm very familiar with, including my brother, Pastor Cameron. You asked for my overall opinion. From what I've seen so far, the whole project was very poorly planned. It is a very poor execution from what I've seen so far going on from the onset. They seem to be trying to do things as they go along, but you cannot get away with a project of this magnitude. It has to be properly planned. You have to look at the things critically from one end to the other. I mean, even not just the airport facility itself. You have to look outside of that. I mean, they're doing the earthwork and all the structures and all the stuff there, but they also concurrently development or relocation of people is going on at the same time. They have excess amount of soil I heard one of the engineers on the site say that they don't know what they're going to, that's a big headache for them. We knew that was going to be a problem, because even from the first meeting we have, I just looking at the Google and the profile, we could see that there was an excess material, but it's a lot of excess. The guy talked like 4 million cubic meters of excess material. To put that in perspective, that we can try to visualize, I did a quick calculation. If you have this big dump truck that hold like about 10 cubic meters, you need about 500,000 of them to put that excess soil. That gives you the kind of, and that's the excess, right? So it's a lot of things. You can't take shortcuts on projects like this. It's gonna come back and hurt you, and that's what these guys are seeing now. This is a major project on any level you consider. And earthwork is the biggest thing on there. And then what's going on with my people? My biggest concern here is the people of Wesley. I'm a Wesley man. I want to see our people get the most benefit out of this thing and being treated with respect. I think it's very disrespectful. And not just the people that are just directly involved or impacted to the land. The whole of Wesley is impacted. Even Woodford and even Marigot. There should be public meetings anytime there's a major project. You have a committee dedicated to public outreach. I mean, people who complain about the dust issue. No one come and give a public meeting. No updates. It's total disrespect. And then you're trying to pay people the minimum for the land, or some of them what they paid for the property. So the people that are telling me when the airport comes, the life just gonna change and everything does, so just suck the salt, right? suck, taking the dust. I heard some guys in the program last night saying, why do people complain about a little dust? I mean, these guys pissed me off so much last night. I told them, bring me on that show. I want to come on live with you guys now. They didn't take me on. They didn't bring me on. But it's the disrespect of my people in Wesley that's going on. These guys are going about this thing unplanned. You can almost say it's an unplanned project, and they're doing things as they go along. Nobody in Dominica, we have never done a big project like that. The people of Wesley did not know what to expect. We had a meeting in October of 2021. We came out there and tried to attack it from all different perspectives. I presented on some technical, we had legal, we had environmental, and so on. And to give people an idea of what to expect. I mean, even Hiram talked about it, Mr. Jenner, the development going on for relocation of the people. The same road, right? The same road that we used to go to the garden many years ago. We had a garden in a place called Horman, and they were Lacquan, and those were some of the biggest banana producing areas. Even that time, the road was wider. I went in when I was down here like 2022, 2023, I was driving up. The road is so narrow that the grass growing along the side of the road was touching both sides of the vehicle. I had to turn back. I mean, that's poor planning. Before you develop that airport, you should have widened that road. It's going to be a major road going through the community. There is no adjacent like a area for shopping area under development. And just, you see, it's a lot of things you have to take into consideration. And this whole project is just a mess. And as I say earlier, the payment. First thing, acquire the land, pay the people, get this out of the way. We have people in the middle of the construction and and with all this noise. I was listening to the show when you guys had the meeting the other day by Mr. David's home, and the the noise from the trucks. I was listening on the phone, and it was so annoying that sometimes I just turned off the volume. And people are living it in. So the whole thing, the whole process is going on in a very disorganized, unplanned, and is very disrespectful to the people. And that's how I see it. We can talk about whether they can build with the studies that are going on. It's possible. With engineering, you can make anything happen. So in terms of whether they do the subsurface investigation now, and even they meet poor soil, you can still build it. Yes, that can still happen. What you have to do is just engineer your foundation to suit the type of soil you meet. The thing with that, if you meet foundation that are worse than you anticipated, then it can drive up your costs significantly. I will tell you one example. Right, we were working on a project in Maryland. I was involved. We went out there, did some borings. Went out there. It was on a limestone area. Limestone sometimes gets weaker, like caustic. You get what you call dissolution of the rock. It's calcium carbonate. You have some big caves in there. So we did some borings. Got some hole. The drill rod dropped a few feet. I was actually out there. So we recommended grouting those holes so we can build on them. When they get out there was like a cave under there. We actually had to build a 3-foot thick platform, concrete, right? Supported on hundreds of piles. Now you know that thing was way more expensive than we anticipated. So those are the kind of things. So you can build, but if the foundation is worse than you expect, it can really drive up the cost, and that cost is a big factor. It could triple the project. So that is what I would say on this so far.
And thank you for that. Thank you very, very, very much for that. Now, so essentially what we're hearing now is that even the technical studies have not yet been completed. The plan does not seem to be completed. But before I go on, let's take a call. Lambi, you want to take a couple of calls?
Yes, caller. Thanks for being there. Go ahead, please. Caller, are you listening? No, he's not listening. So please go ahead.
Okay, so the caller is not ready. He'll call back, or he or she will call back. We'll be happy to take the call when they call back. But the point I'm thinking, go ahead, Lambi. Let's take the call.
Caller, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dominica. Good evening.
Go right ahead. How are you doing?
Hello.
Don't listen to
Hello,
your
good
radio.
evening.
Just don't listen to your radio. Listen to the phone. How are you doing?
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, go right ahead. Lambi is not hearing us. Okay, so we'll have to go on because you should, when you call back, try to ensure that he's hearing us, Lambi, before. Otherwise, All right, so the point I was making is that it seems to me that the preparation has been inadequate. The planning has been inadequate. We don't know of any plans right now. And certainly what we're being told is that, well, what we're witnessing, first of all, is that the EIA studies have not been done because all this question of dust pollution and so on, that would have been taken into account. The question of having people in the middle of a development where you have construction work going on, all of that would have been done if you had done the studies. That would not have been the case. And then the whole question of actually construction work going on while people are still living in the property. And then the third thing is developers putting people to live in property that people have not yet been paid for. Obviously, that shows inadequate planning and preparation for that project. And that leaves some people to wonder whether, in fact, the intention was to have an airport there at all. And some people have been questioning that. A little later on, I will read some of the comments as well. But I mean, Jean-Francois, you're back with us now. I hope you can hear us and we'll be able to hear you. Give us your thoughts on all of this before we go on to have this conversation generally, so we can get to the root of this to see what it is that need to be done to correct what is going on now. Because obviously the thing to do right now is to, one, compensate the people 2, ensure that people are well compensated in quick time. 3, that those who have to be relocated, who want to be relocated, they are relocated on lands that has infrastructure so that they can in fact bring their lives back to what it was before. As one of the callers said, it's not just a matter of saying $15 million is going to be paid. You're paying $15 million to restore what you took away from the people. You're bringing them back to square one. You're not making them wealthy. They're not a day richer. You're just bringing them to where they were before. And so if you give them 15 million and what is required to bring them to where they were before is 30 million, it means you're underpaying them. Jean-Francois, your thoughts on some of those?
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Mr. G. Thanks for having me here this evening. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. The internet or whatever just dropped, so that's why I could not have hear anything. But you know, this battle has started for me a very, very long time in trying to get the people of Wesley to understand what is happening here to us is almost madness. You know, on the panel there, I'm the only one who was not originally born in Wesley. Okay? But I've been in Wesley for over 30 years. I've been living in Wesley for over 30 years. And when this airport project came along, and I saw the ease in which these people just willingly gave up their property, you know, I asked my wife, what madness is going on here? Why is it that the people of Wesley are not fighting for what is duly theirs? And knowing that lands were already bought for an international airport, and all of a sudden, these people are just taking our property, like Dr. Pastor Robin, who went overseas and worked hard and came back home and tried to. I did better himself. I did the very same thing, and I built my home saying, well, this is my retirement home and I have no intention of moving. And here it is that these guys just came and just want to take people's property without even any proper discussion. I am one of those who like to question things. And if it does not make sense to me, then it does not make sense. And I would like people to make sense, who know better, to make it make sense to me. So when I saw what was happening and persons were not fighting, because I tried to tell people this thing is not right. It cannot be right what these guys are doing. And persons were not listening. So I told my wife, you see this thing there, I'm not a Wesley man. I didn't born in Wesley. And we have leaders who gladly just gave up their property. And I'm wondering, but why would these people do these things? About 2 days after I told my wife that, Pastor Cameron called me and told me they are forming a group. Would I want to be part of this? And I told him, well, you know, I don't know, but my love for Wesley compels me to join that group. And we tried to make people understand what will happen if they do not stand together, if they don't stick together. And everything that we said is happening. What we said 4 years ago is happening today. The government did a very good job in allowing the people to vote and to fight against their own best wishes. What was good for them, the government turned it around and said that what we were doing is politicking. I've never been on a political platform in my life. I'm sure Pastor Cameron has never been on a political platform, nor Woolworth. I know TC has been on a political platform, but these are the members of the group who are here, and others who I know who had never been on a political platform. All our concerns were for the betterment of Wesley. And very early in the process, the government formed this airport group where they had a number of persons on that group, including the chairman of the village council, whose responsibility is to the village, not to any political party. And about about 2 months ago, about 2 to 3 months ago, I met him and I told him, why is it that you guys, you as chairman, have never kept a meeting with the people of Wesley to inform them what is happening, where the different stages are? Why is it that you guys have never done that? And he watched me and he told me that I'm supposed to be negotiating for myself as to my value of my property and this type of nonsense. I told him I've done that long time. It's 3 years now since I've signed. And for full disclosure, gentlemen, I received a call today that they said that my check for one of my properties is I'm ready. Okay, so for full disclosure, that they've promised that my check is ready. So I told him, well, I've done that long time. I am not talking about me, because this fight is not about me. I will be fine in the end, doesn't matter what. What is going to happen to Wesley? Where are our children going to be tomorrow? Right now, Wesley is in a bowl with lands owned by government all around us. After they relocate us, our children have nowhere to turn. So Wesley has stopped right now. There's no more further development for the people of Wesley. And we have leaders who were in this group formed by the government to look after the affairs of the people of Wesley. Every single member of this group who had property were compensated very early. And it appears as if that government used these people to fool many persons and allow them to rush to sign. Because while we were telling these people not to sign, let us go as one. At least if one person is getting $4 for a square foot of land, everybody should get the same $4, because we are all in it together. These people allowed these politicians to divide them and to cause them to have not to get the true value of their property. I fought very hard and I worked very hard for what I have. Okay, they have my home and I also have a business place. They basically have killed my business because many of the persons who were living down here, they moved them. Now my business is struggling. On my very first discussion with this gentleman, Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Lestrade, I told them, this is my livelihood. This is what I do for a living. What is going to happen to me? Even if you pay me for the house, you are affecting my livelihood. How am I going to continue providing for my family? And these guys watched me like I was a madman. They did not understand that they're supposed to compensate me for my business, because you cannot leave me in a worse state than how you met me. I put certain requests to them that I wanted lands because you met me right on the main road. I want to be positioned in that very same place, because every vehicle that passes by on the main road is a potential customer to me. They did not understand that. And up to this day, they have not understood it. We are still, though I signed, I am still fighting with them to try to get certain things in place. Up to today, they told me that because the property was willed to my wife, after 3 years of negotiation, almost 4 years of negotiation, today when we called, they told me that we need to get the will probated. This is what they're telling me today. After the Prime Minister went and said, you have $15 million to see me through Wesley, like we are drunkards. Our property they've taken up from us, they're replacing it. They're barely making you, if anything, putting you back to ready met you, knowing very much that the price of building materials have gone up. The Prime Minister himself said in 2022, December that the cost of the airport was $1 billion. In May 2023, he said it had gone up to $3.3 billion, and stating that the price of building materials have gone up. If it has gone up for you, Mr. Prime Minister, it has also gone up for me. So I would like to be in a same position as you are, or better. And you know that's 6% of 6% that you owe for every year. I would like to be compensated for it. This is very serious because my cost has gone up. I want to be compensated for it because had you paid me 3 years ago, I could have my money in the bank and get interest on it. The law states that you need to compensate people from the time you acquired the land. If I go and I commit a crime, I am going to be held accountable because of the law. The law is not for me alone. The law is for everybody. Do right to the people. And maybe hopefully later on, we will talk, maybe if I get opportunity to talk about our PAL rep or lack of representation from our PAL rep. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Jean-Francois. Thank you for that. Before I go on to take a call, Lambi.
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Good evening, Dominica.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I have been laughing, because when I hear Skerrit say 15 million is too much for a small community like Wesley, I wonder where he's spending the 1,300 million. Is in the Wesley South. So this man have no intention of building no kind of airport to leave money in Dominica. The money that he's spending is to go out, not to remain in Dominica, because I believe the Wesley people should be talking about, in the roughly 500 million, but it's a shame. And the caller that called and said that the people did not try to help the people of Wesley. No, in the beginning, there was a young man who was volunteering his time, trying to assess the property for the Wesley people, trying to make the people from Wesley be smart. But they was hard. Some of them were too political. So they did not listen to you all. You all have made a contribution to these people every Tuesday night, but they did not pay attention. Just like now, we have a hero, Mr. Linton, Sir Linton, trying to tell us how much this government is scheming us. And we not listening. What are we going to do? In the next 2 years, we're going to say, oh, you should have done a better job? No. Oh, you tried all your best. But Dominicans are hard-headed people. And I want to say I support Fight. Fight did not call nobody name. When you have 6 guys taking 6 years in court, going 6 years in court to solve a case, and yet still you have somebody that sits down in Parliament as Speaker of the House, which is part of the evidence. They're not calling him to testify or do anything, but you want to penalize the opposition. And they know there is no evidence, yet still. So I support Fight. Fight, you are a hero. Let us support Fight. Fight talking for us. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. Let's take another call, Lambi.
Good evening, caller, please go ahead.
Rample.
Yes, Nurse, go ahead.
Nurse Rample, how are you?
Really, when I listen, God have a special blessing for you, because I learned a lot tonight. Because there's so much disrespect. I am so angry. I'm not going to take much of the time because I'm really, really angry. And people should not be angry in a country like this. I have worked hard for my country. I know I can get my money. You tell neighbors to go and get their title probate now? You don't think you're wicked? You have to be heartless. Skerrit, what is wrong with you? Really, you have problem and you cannot continue, man, but you're hurting people. Mr. G? Mr. G?
Nurse Rample?
Yes, let me come back, because everybody calling me, Nurse, calm yourself. You cannot be so disrespectful. They never kept a meeting with people.
Yeah.
Here I hear them talk when they don't take. When I get to know that, I tell my man, you don't think it's our land they take? He said, I got your will for me, and he went. They already done put in everything. They say, I buy the land. My uncle buy the land. My uncle buy the land. My uncle died from cancer. He was a big doctor in Germany. His brother come, he died. He leave what is better for him, for us. Now you're telling me about to go and which land you have. So if you go and probate land, you're not getting nothing. So all these 3 years that we should have got 66% on our money. Probate is what you have to do, but that is disrespect and that is wicked and that is heartless. And I never believed Mr. Skerritt could have a heart like that. Mr. Skerritt, may God of heaven go with you. I don't say more tonight. I do it. Bye bye.
As I remember, we feel your pain. I've been hearing you calling and talking about it for a long time. I really think it's time to settle your business for you now. It's really high time. You've been really hurting on this. I know that. So thanks so much for calling. Dr. Andre, you want to take another call, Lambi, before we go?
Yes, we've got many calls coming in there. Good evening, caller. Go ahead, please, quickly.
Yes, sir. Good evening. How are you doing?
We're
Good
fine.
evening.
Yeah, I'm one of the persons on the committee too, and just calling to give my support. Now, we talk about the airport program and everything else like that. I know as a retired fire officer that international laws dealing with airports is controlled by ICAO, International Civil Aviation Association. Now, you have to get those everything to give to them in order that you can start something. Because in the previous international airport that we have, all those things were done, before soil started to move. But in a situation like this, now, you have all work doing. You haven't got the soil test, you haven't got the physical plan, you haven't feasibility study, you haven't got the wind study that it takes about a year and 4 months or so. You haven't got the environmental impact study. You haven't got nothing like that, and all this work is being done, and something is not right there. Now, the other thing is the people in the area, the Prime Minister used his supporters and fooled them in order that they could get their monies, and then, so it looks like something was going on. So as Mr. Francis was saying, that the people, he didn't understand why they were doing that, but they were among themselves trying to fool each other and do their little bidding for themselves. But right now, a lot of them, they are regretting that the price they asked for the land, and for their property. But we have our panelists there, and those guys, okay. So I'll just talk just a little bit in for now. Okay. Good night, guys. Take it easy. You're doing good.
Thanks a lot for calling. All right. So Lambi, you just make us a sign if you have a call. If you have one, you'll take it now before I move on. All right. So Dr. Andre, you've been hearing all of this there, and I want to go back to you briefly. And then I want to go back to Jen and everybody else, because, we have to clarify this thing. I mean, Lambi, you want to take this call?
Yes, caller, please go ahead quickly.
Hey, good evening, Lambi. Good evening to your panel. How are you guys doing?
Not bad at all. How about you?
I'm doing all right, listening to the program as usual. And
Okay.
just thought I'd make a contribution. Hey, so about a year and a half ago, I was part of a discussion. I know Robin, I think I said Robin earlier. He's also a geologist working in the DC, Maryland area. And we were on one of the panels. We talked about the importance of doing an environmental impact assessment prior to going out there and doing a work of that scale. And I had the privilege of being back home again in December. And one of the things I mentioned while we talking about environmental impact for Wesley, because the airport is built there, I mentioned having also looking at impacts in the surrounding communities, because as much as we are focusing on the Wesley community, our capital project that is over $1 billion is not a Wesley project. We have to start looking at it as a Dominica project. It is in the town capital, it is in the Wesley area, but this is not for Wesley people. This is a Dominica project, and the sale of citizenship for raising funds or capital to build that project is a Dominica issue. And I think we have in our conversation, we need to make it clear that this is not just an issue that affects Wesley people. And what I noticed when I came home, there was some road being cut in the Blenheim area. And the entire roadway from Blenheim to Wesley is in a deplorable condition. The bridge in Ansdimi has no railings. And if you look on the side of the bridge, there is cracks and sinking on the bridge. The bridge in Hampstead has been destroyed, so they're using that bypass. There are several other bridges that are in terrible condition. And when the roads were built, one of the things they don't mention is they do compaction testing on those roads, and you have heavy equipment cycling on the roads. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to have sinks, you're going to have swells, and over a period of time, the vibration will cause those structures to get weak because they're not built for that, essentially. And I don't want to sound like doom, but I am giving the bridge in Nzimbi, if it continues that way, about 2 more years with that construction. And the problem is when they're doing their impact assessment, those communities were not factored in because everything is focused on Wesley. You're spending over billions of dollars, and to date, nobody has seen a serious plan. And I heard Robin talk about having construction prior to getting the data you need. That happens, but that is the stupid way of doing it. And the reason why is because you have a project so large, when there are uncertainties, what you're going to have is serious cost overruns. And if you're telling me you're building a structure so huge without proper plan, without proper development, my friends, we have complex examples of the government managing stuff in Dominica that is not complete. We can talk about the Moroccan hotel. We can talk about several other infrastructure, coffee plant. And you telling me if you cannot complete a small structure that is 10 million or less, how am I going to trust you with doing billions of dollars when there is no oversight from the country itself? And here is the big kicker. We are selling citizenship to raise those funds through MMC, and MMC has hired a foreign country. This money is not even making it for Dominica because MMC is not paying these contractors for the banks in Dominica. So the banks are not benefiting. That money is staying out of Dominica, and the only thing that is left in Dominica is destruction of the environment, a physical structure, and we are not seeing the impact of the influx of cash and finance into the communities. I mean, the Chinese who came there built their own settlement. They don't rent from locals. You don't see, instead of talking about the creation of rental properties, supermarkets, groceries, fuel, items for a structure that large, we see none of the support infrastructure going up. Therefore, it tells me that the country is not benefiting from that influx of cash, that cash engine in the country. And what is happening is that money is being taken out. And I think over the years, we have, and somebody mentioned it earlier, we have an administrative problem in Dominica. It's not just infrastructure, it's the hospital, the police, the courts, the schools. And it's all because Dominicans' best and finest are not involved in the decision-making process. When you have, frankly, fools, or you have clowns or puppets who just go to a cabinet and sign yes sir, yes ma'am, without questioning the process, without questioning the intent, without questioning the viability, then we have issues. My friend, any capital project that is undertaken in any country, they first have to do a financial model to see if there is a profitability. How many financial models we have seen for that airport? Absolutely none. So at the end of the day, when you telling me that the state gives an individual to sell citizenship by investment so that they can raise capital for a foreign company to build the airport, and you know what the government said? We are using the Chinese company just in case things doesn't work out. They have the capital to support it. My friends, we're in serious problems. You know, we are in so much doo-doo that we don't even understand what's happening. And let me give you a historical context. There's a guy in Haiti back in the days after independence who built the citadel, and it crippled the country. And some people think that building infrastructure is a sign of development. And building infrastructure in that way can be an indication of bad things to come. And you know how I know? Because our hospital cannot afford equipment. Civil servants cannot get raises. We have schools that are asking for equipment because they can't get it. You cannot pay the scholarship. You cannot pay for printing of passports. The government is owing, nobody wants LPO because the government owing every Tom, Dick, and Harry. And I'm asking myself, how are we building an international airport, building a geothermal plant, building all this infrastructure that is supposed to bring revenue, building hotels, and we cannot pay our bills? my friends, we are in serious financial trouble. And I will say again, we will run our mouth from January to December. Unless we get this monkey off our backs, we are going nowhere. And before I leave, in 2022, the Prime Minister of Dominica dissolved cabinet, called an election, installed some puppets in different constituencies, and he is the king on top of the mountain. Nobody said nothing. Not a stone was thrown. What is to prevent him from doing it again and again and again? And if I was Roosevelt Skerrit, in 2025 December, I would do the same damn thing, because Dominicans apparently like misery. And instead of us fighting and saying it's a Wesley issue, my friends, this is not a Wesley issue. This is a Dominica issue, and it's about time Dominicans demand what they deserve and take back control of their governance. You guys have a good evening.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate the comments. Dr. Andre, I was going to go back to you. Why? Because, I want to bring this focus back on Wesley again. Because this eminent domain thing, and you heard it was Jean-Francois who spoke. He wants to come back and talk about the interest that's owed to him. But it's not to him alone. All those persons whose lands were acquired and have not yet got paid, there's interest accumulating on that. And I'm sure you clarified that for us. And then secondly, Jean-Francois also raised the question of the PAL rep. Where is the PAL rep? I mean, I mentioned the question of what is happening in Calibishi. And from the time I made some inquiries, I was told, yes, the PAL rep was down there with the officials from the education ministry, and we had discussions, and they're going to go back and we're going to come back and meet again. I have not heard anything from anyone on this panel so far who has said that the PAL rep has engaged them in a meaningful way and said, listen, let's discuss, fellas. I'm here to represent your interests in the cabinet. That's why I'm there. And therefore, when is something going to happen to get the PAL rep to come and sit at the table in the constituency with his constituents to ensure that he protects their interests? Dr. Andre, I'll go to you first, and then I'll go to Jenna. First, really get that discussion going around what's going on there to see if we can get some results from this thing.
Well, bear in mind that the whole reason for having parliamentary reps is to have a representative member of the community be in cabinet and to prosecute the interests of his or her constituency as best as he or she can possibly do so. That is what representative government is all about, to have your representatives representing you in parliament. But if the purpose of being in parliament is merely to enrich yourself, is merely to be, how should I say it? How should I say it nicely? Is to merely be an echo of what your leader in parliament says or does, is merely to be a rubber stamped, then the whole meaning or the whole justification for having a representative is done away with. And that is the phenomenon that we've experienced in Dominica over the last few years. Parliamentary representatives who are more interested in feathering their own nest, not all, but too many, as opposed to advocating on behalf of the people. I mean, where you have a village whose members have been forced to sell their lands, not at market prices, but at prices imposed by the authorities. And to add insults to injury, many of them are not compensated, whether for their lands or whether for their crops. And thirdly, to suffer the ignominy of seeing strangers occupy and enjoy properties that has been in their family for generations. So this is not just a disrespect of the Wesley people. It's a debasement of them. It's treating them like non-entities in their own island. And then to impose a legal requirement, they have to get their wills probated if they don't have certificate of title, is to add insult to injury. You met them on their lands, They've been enjoying their land for donkey years, for decades. And you're taking the land, you're not paying them, and you are imposing a legal requirement for them to go through the long process and expensive process of probating a will or obtaining title after you have unilaterally decided that you're going to take their lands or induce them to sell their lands to you. And we're talking not months delay, we're talking years of delay. I cannot think of a situation which is more egregious or more wrong than what some of these folks on your panel have had to contend with. It ain't right. No amount of political perfume can hide the stench from this transaction. Quite right. At the same time, you are giving some citizens the right to sell passports and to become filthy rich. You're depriving the salt of the earth of their own property. And to make it worse, you are failing to compensate them for their own property. Sadly, my friends, only in Dominica.
No, thank you, Dr. Andrew. Now, Jenna, I want to go back to you for a minute there because, we heard the clip that we ran a little earlier, and the Prime Minister was saying, this $15 million is a lot of money to go in this community. But, Jenna, let me ask you something. Do you recall, in fact, that Wesley and the environs there used to be producing millions and millions of dollars in agricultural crops? Just in that community. So this question of paying $15 million to people's property who you took, and you're just trying to restore them to where they were before you imposed on them and took their property. Something about that does not sound right. Because these people are used to making money with their land. They've been doing that for years. They build their homes, they send their children to school, they buy their transport. They've been doing that for years. Tell me about this, because it seems to me that this cannot be right. And I want to go back, Jenna, and let's talk about the PAL rep thing. Well, it seems to me that if people put up a representative to represent him in the cabinet and in parliament, that person should do their work to represent the people. And I don't know what success your committee has had in getting to have a conversation with the parliamentary representative, to get into to understand the position and the situation and the sufferings of your people there. I don't know what progress you've made of that, but I hope you can tell us what you have. And I certainly hope that tomorrow, because I know they're listening, and I certainly hope that if PALREP is not listening, I hope somebody tells him what we're talking about. I certainly hope he can do like the PALREP of Calibishi has done. Call tomorrow, call Jenna, and say, Jenna, we should meet, boy. We should meet and talk about this thing. This thing is building up some pressure. People are getting frustrated. We don't want people to, look, I'm here to represent the people. Let's meet to discuss the issue, see how we can get this thing sorted out. Jenna, tell us a little bit more about this if you can.
Mr. G, the issue of the $15 million, that's just a joke. And like you said, Wesley has been a self-sustainable Wesley for as long as I can remember. I remember people, some farmers used to leave Wesley with a little bag with $60,000, $70,000 and go down to town, buy a vehicle and come back up. I remember as a little boy, I used to go and draw money, the pay packet for my father, selling bananas. And he wasn't a very large, banana farmer, but pay packets used to meet pay packet. You know what I'm saying? So Wesley have been self-sufficient for as long as I can remember. On the issue of the PALREP, I have written up this guy a long time ago. In all this fiasco, not one time I've ever heard him make one statement in solidarity with the Wesley people. The same Wesley people he came asking to vote for him. The same people that he's supposed to be representing. A few years ago, there was a farmer whose planting field was bulldozed. And that made headlines. People were calling him Matt and all that stuff. A lot of people were concerned. Matt asked him to call in, the PALREP called in, and what he said? He said, oh, the people, this guy they were sent letters a year ago to vacate the property. Man, this is our livelihood that we're talking about. Our livelihood. How could you make that statement, about the people that you represent or you're supposed to be representing? 3 weeks ago, when we had the first meeting and the first live, it happened on a Thursday. The very next day, the Friday, he went on, the Parliament went on Q95. And again, instead of making a statement in support of our cause, which were genuine, he started throwing words, what we commonly call mepui, to all the persons who spoke on the podium. And he even went on to lie. The first thing, one of the things that he said was, he made it political right away. 95% of the people who were there were blue. Secondly, he said that the reason why some people have title issue was that the land that they were given or they occupied or they built on were not part of the original airport plan. That was a lie. Every piece of land that anybody got up in that Joe Button area was shown and given to them by both Lloyd and Lestrade being present. Now, the PAL rep had a meeting with our group. And unfortunately, I refused to attend that meeting for many reasons. So I will leave that meeting, I'll leave the agenda on that meeting to be discussed by Pastor Robin, because he was present. But on another note, Mr. G, interestingly, it is quite obvious that the Prime Minister has been playing games all along. I remember about 2 or 3 elections ago, the PM said to the people that he has the financing, he has the drawings, and all that he needed from the people was the mandate to get the project started. Today, there are still so many people who have not gotten paid. Where is that money? Where was that financing? Where is the financing he had? More recently, the PM said on more than one occasion that everybody has been paid, and that those who have not gotten paid were either out of state or dead. Up till today, so many still have not gotten paid. On another thing, Mr. G, on a more personal level, I migrated to the US about 38 years ago. My wife and I, we worked hard. We built our home. And we took early retirement with a view to coming home, settle and enjoy our hard work. Unfortunately, because of the bad planning on the government side, some of us are here living in the middle of an ongoing construction site. How could a person be so wicked and disrespectful to other human beings? So, Mr. J, we are asking for the PM to come out to meet with the people of Wesley. Let us try to iron out those burning concerns, because I can promise you, the Wesley people are prepared to stand up now. Thank you.
Excellent. And Pastor Robin, I'm going to go to you because to continue, but then after that, I'm just going to open it up. Everybody can jump in anytime and just make a contribution. Don't wait for me to call you, because at this point now, I think we need to really get down to the meat of the matter, because what you want ultimately is a result. You want to get paid for your property, right? And you want to ensure that this thing is going well. In fact, from some of the comments I've heard, Pastor Robin, it is even throwing doubt as to whether, in fact, there's any serious plan for an airport. It is throwing some doubt on that, because the level of technical studies that have been done, there's so much more to be done there. And the environmental impact assessment obviously have not been done. Otherwise, the people who be having those problems, they would have relocated people before all of that took place. When you have a school in the middle of all of this and kids have to be inhaling all this dust, it's a serious health issue, health hazard. So, Pastor Robin, let's talk a little bit more about this.
You know, the more that I listen, the more that I listen to the frustration of our people, the more incensed I become, about this thing. Because living in the community is so very different from looking from the outside. You know, you can never appreciate what is really happening on the ground by looking on the from the outside. A lot of people who are talking from the outside, they don't know the everyday to day frustration that we experience on the ground in the community. You know, I'm from here. I grew up here as a young boy. All of these lands that is now being razed to the ground and laid bare and creating this plume of dust in the community are areas that as a young boy I traversed and spent a lot of time sometimes, you know, making Turan from school and go climb trees to eat puadu and go raid people's mango trees and that kind of stuff. So I know all these areas. I know of all the waterways and the difficult terrain that the people have to encounter in order to make this thing happen. I'm aware of all of that. You know, and I'm also aware that a lot of people are speaking, but they're speaking without knowledge. You know, we in the beginning of this whole exercise, we tried our very best to educate our people, because although we came from the platform of not being in a position to development, there was a level of doubt in our minds as to why this thing was being rushed into without any kind of proper consultation with the people. As of yet, there has not been a public meeting in our community by the leaders of this nation. As of yet, there has not been a public meeting. I emphasize that. And to me, that is it's not just remiss of the people who are leading, but it says to me that they don't value the people as much as they desire to accomplish what they feel they want to accomplish. The people are marginalized. The people are not being looked upon as being very important. Otherwise, you would have taken the approach of securing the livelihood of the people first before you even venture to touch one blade of grass on these lands. You know, our young children who are exposed to this ridiculous thing in the school system on a daily basis is one of the reasons why I'm standing here today. You know, our elderly people who cannot speak up for themselves, and the many, many people who today have been robbed of their ability to advance themselves in our community, that I know have been very proud because we have always had the handle on our own lives. And I think that is one of the things that these people are trying to do, to get us to a point where we don't have anything and we don't have the capability to advance ourselves. You know, we are very proud people in this community here. You know, my father, you know, I believe if he was living in a more affluent place with opportunities, my father could have been an engineer. And I believe one of the reasons why my brother, my younger brother here, chose that pursuit is because of what he learned from my father. My father built boats. My father made cane squeezers with cogs that could turn. I mean, my father was one of the first guys who made a copra house with wood and sheeted out with tin, with galvanized. People laughed at him, but we used to bake over 2,000 coconuts in that copra house. My dad was a G, you know, and what is happening here today to our people? I'm getting the feedback. What is happening here today to our people is really a disgrace, because I know the people like my dad in that generation would never have allowed this to happen without standing up. And when we first came out and said to our people, look, you need to get proper representation. You need to get an attorney. You need to get your property evaluated. This is for your own benefit. The people who came after from the government, over 25 vehicles were in our community the next day after our first meeting, running helter-skelter throughout the community, dividing the community. And I would say to the people who formed the committee in the beginning, who were a part of bringing this community to the place that it is today. Shame on you for playing the role of a divider for your own benefit. You were so short-sighted in your understanding of things that you believe that brick and mortar that you got, which is on property that doesn't belong to you, was enough to sell your community for. Shame on you. And I believe the people who are here on this panel today, who are standing up to try to bring correction to this. Yes, I know it's kind of late, but we've tried our very best to bring this to the forefront of the people. And the reason why we're here today is because people did not listen. So we are trying again another time, because I believe if we don't do something, this community will go down. And when it goes down, it will go down because there was nobody to stand for her. And I will not allow that to happen as a leader in the community. I will never relent. And I believe from this period forward, that talk should cease and action should begin. Yes, and the preacher has said that. Talk should cease and action should begin. I believe we have been a nation of talk for too long, and talk has not done anything to bring about the kind of change that we need to see in this nation. And like someone said earlier, this is not just a Wesley problem. This is a national problem. And if we sit back and we take the position that this is a Wesley problem, we're already beginning to see the failure of our nation. This is a time when we need to stand up, and people from all across this nation need to stand up and take this thing to the next level and say, this is where the buck stops. And that is all I got to say at this point.
And very well said as well. Extremely well said. Dr. TC, I want to go back to, we're getting a little feedback. Somebody's mic might be open, but we're getting a little feedback. It's okay now. It's much better. Dr. TC, let me hear from you. I mean, you've heard from other people on this. I mean, some of the arguments and the discussion you've heard also before. But I mean, it's dawning on me then that really it's the urgency of now. I mean, I listened to this lady called tonight, the nurse, and I listened to the pain in her voice. I mean, look, they've had this property for years, and now she's having difficulty years getting paid. Why should any resident, any Dominican, any citizen, any bona fides have to go through this just to get something that is theirs, that belongs to them? Where is the equity? Where is the justice? Where is the empathy for those who do not have a lot? It seems to me, Pastor Robin is right, and the other people who spoke is right. You should not move a muscle, not cut a blade of grass until you ensure that your people are okay. And as I said, even you're a businessman. And as I said, even as you go, why is it that we want to bring a developer and bring a contractor and construction people there in the biggest project that Dominica will probably ever have for a very long time? And you don't even make any effort to ensure that your people are engaged and employed in that work so that a lot of that skill can be transferred to your Dominican people, so that in the future, if you have another major project, you don't have to import all of the expertise and the skills. You could use your people, just like the public works used to be at one time, building our roads, our buildings, and so on. You throw them aside, and now we're doing the same thing with our people when this big project is coming. And then it means that next year we might hear the same thing from the Prime Minister again, saying, listen, we've exported $213 million from this country because all these foreign workers and contractors have exported these millions. Yes, they've exported $213 million, but it means that that's not all what they received. That is what they did not need to use while they're in Dominica. So they're sending the rest home. So it means that they must have received a lot more. Can you imagine if you had put this $250 or $300 million into circulation in the economy? What kind of noise? You let more noise in the cash registers ringing in all the supermarkets and all the small shops around the country, and people wouldn't be crying broke. The Calypsonians wouldn't be singing songs saying we broke, everybody broke. So I mean, the point I'm making is this, Dr. TC. Let's talk about this, and then anybody can just jump in after that. I mean, we need to get out of this thing. And this PAL rep that you have, I mean, this gentleman, he needs to come out from wherever he is and get to meet with the people. And the leader of the country needs to meet with the people of Wesley and the surrounding areas and to put things right and to pay the people. Okay, JC?
G, well, let me start with one of the points that you made. I remember on the onset when group first got together, one of the things that Willwood used to harp on quite a bit was that an airport could come in Wesley and the people of Wesley would benefit. It's possible that the people of Wesley would have absolutely no benefit from it. And we're seeing that right now. I mean, there are people doing the security jobs and there are some drivers, but it's indicative of what could happen on a larger scale, where the real jobs are not going to be held by people in the community. And that is one of the things that we were trying to impress on the people of Wesley from the onset, that they had to be careful, because although this infrastructure project was supposedly coming to our community, it could be very likely that the community could not or would not benefit from it. You can talk to the shopkeepers in Wesley and ask them how much how much profit they've actually made since this project started. I mean, the Chinese, I said once before, Chinese didn't just wake up from China one morning and decided, hey, let me go to Wesley and start grading people's crops and start doing all of these things. Somebody brought them here. And the people who brought them here obviously are very, very poor negotiators, because they did not negotiate on behalf of our people. They made sure that the people that were coming were the benefactors of the work that we were going to be doing. And so our people are left out in the cold, basically. You know, I remember growing up, I grew up with my grand aunt. And at that time there were Bedford trucks. And Bedford trucks used to hold 300 boxes of bananas for the 3-ton trucks. And my aunt would cut bananas below our house. Then she would go over to Bonham to cut bananas. Then she'd go up to Hammond to cut bananas. Then come down to Hunt to cut bananas. And we would fill one of those 3-ton trucks with bananas. So $15 million is chicken change for Wesley. It's nothing. People of Wesley saw that kind of money just as pocket change years and years ago. Inflation has increased the value of money or decreased the value of money. And so now $15 million means absolutely very, very little in this community. But let me even go on to something else. Do you realize that there are people in this community right now whose property are supposedly or were supposedly acquired and they have yet to be spoken to? No one has actually came to their homes and spoken to them and told them and gave them any type of negotiation. This exists right now. There are people who the government officials have actually came to and said, don't plant anything, don't make any improvement to your home. We may be needing your home, or we may be needing this property. This is very much indicative that there is no plan, no set plan for what is going on in Wesley. They do not know what they're doing. We do not know where the line of the airport supposedly is passing. We do not know where the bypass road is going to be. Because at the onset, when we first came out with the first meeting, they came up with this glorified simulation of what the airport was going to be. And then there was a certain point where there was a disco ball of some sort where a tunnel was going to start going under the runway and coming out into some location that was unidentified. No one knows where that has went. No one knows what has become of that underpass or that tunnel. We don't know. They are all over the village measuring We see them up in one area one day, we see them surveying another area another day. We don't know. And as for the issue of the power of Mr. G, we can just write him out because he has served this community poorly. In fact, let me even go as far as saying he has not served this community at all when it comes to this airport or this project. When you have such a project of such magnitude going on in your community, you are the one who is supposed to go into cabinet and say, look, this is what's going to affect my people. My people are concerned about X, Y, Z, and this is what we need to be looking at. These are the factors that we need to be taking into consideration. You have an EIA. We were told that an EIA was done. No one has seen this EIA. Nobody. We were also told that there is no plan. I mean, they've actually come out and said that there is no plan, and the plan will only be formulated after they've done all the testing, which means the testing has yet to be completed. So why are you on people's property grading? What are you actually doing? We don't know, because you have no plan, and everyone who has built anything knows that you cannot come up with a cost to a project unless you have a plan. So if you don't have a plan, why are you out there saying this project is going to cost $1 billion or $1.3 billion? How do you know that? You have no idea what you're going to build, how you're going to build it, or even where you're going to build it. So Mr. G, this whole catastrophe, as it seems to be getting to be, is just, I don't even know what adjectives to use to describe this. But in my case, I have property that has been acquired. I received a letter back in September, as I said, of 2020 that my property was acquired. And up to today, no one has sat down with me in any formal negotiation as to how my property is going to be compensated to me. No one has taken the time to call me and say, let us sit down and let's come to some type of agreement. What do you want? How do you want? I've had one informal meeting on the street where I basically told this gentleman what my prerequisite was for relinquishing my property to the government. And that was to give me what I had or better. Don't take me out from the main road where I am and put me in the bushes somewhere. That's unacceptable. Don't take my property with a title and give me a piece of property with a sketch. That's unacceptable. And I think if more people in Wesley at the onset had listened to what the group of us were telling them, instead of chasing and running behind us and telling us that, oh, you have your big house already, that's why you don't want us to get anything, or you have what you have. Mr. G, I'll end by saying this. I spent 26 years in the United States Navy. Spent 13 years as an enlisted person and 13 years as an officer. I've been to places all over the globe. I could have chosen as many as just about all of us, if not all of us here on this panel, any other place to live. I could have settled in Australia, I could have settled in Thailand, I could have settled in the Philippines, in the US, in the Virgin Islands. There are so many places that I saw that living there would have been great, and I could have lived there without a problem. But I had no desire to live there. I wanted to come back to Dominica to live. That's my home, that's where I wanted. And not only that, I saw no other place in Dominica that I wanted to live but Wesley. And so that is why I'm standing up for this village. That's why I'm standing up, because it's a place I love. It's a place I want it to be. It's a place that I dream of coming back to. And so even if there are people out there that do not want to fight for the community, do not think it's necessary to fight for the community, I'm glad to see that those of us on this panel, and there are more, that are willing to stand up and fight for something in which they believe, not only for ourselves, but for others who are unwilling or unable to fight for the community.
And thanks a lot for that, Dr. Thomas. I wanted to really go to Clint and to Wilworth, and then after that, I'm going to take our sort of closing remarks. Because as something, the time is not always very friendly to us, really overstayed. But maybe Clint, let me go to you first. His mic might be open, getting good feedback here. So Clint, let me go to you first.
Somebody's mic is open.
Yes, I thought somebody's mic is open. Getting some feedback coming in.
Okay, I want to start by saying, I mean, we run that already, but I'm just going to break it down for you in terms of production. A lot of Dominican people seem to think that we should just ride away into the sunset and don't say anything. Mr. G, at one time, I worked at DBMC for a few years in the banana days. And at one time, per annum, Dominica would produce almost 4 million boxes of bananas a year. How do you get to that figure? 72,000 tons. You bring that down into pounds and you divide it by 40. And it should give you 3.8 million boxes of bananas. Now you can go further. Wesley had over 200 active farmers out of a population of 1,700 people. And you could pretty much get an average figure as to how much money Wesley would bring in. Now, I say that to say that if I sat here tonight and I didn't take a job at my pal rep, I would not be happy. I would not sleep good tonight. So I guess I'm in the perfect place to make an analogy. I sit every day and I look at my village. I wasn't born in a hospital. I was born in an area where TC grew up and where Mr. David Hiram or Jenna David grew up, Bottom Wesley. So that makes me, now, based on the history of Wesley, any old person would tell you that is where the village began. Wesley began as a fishing village. So I'm from that area. That's a backdrop. And for my life, I came up under people like Mr. Elford Henry, Mr. Williams, Peter Carbon, and all the others. And they really push leadership. I remember as a small child, I used to listen with my granny's husband, because I grew up with them. We didn't have the privilege of a television. We used to listen to transistor radio. And I could hear Harry Henry in the House of Assembly. I could hear people like Michael Douglas in the House of Assembly. Those are the two people I knew I could remember. And after then, Mamu came in and whatever. Mr. G and Dominicans. It is very shameful for what is taking place in Wesley. And we have a sitting parliament on 2 different occasions. The people in this constituency voted for that individual. And it seems to me, that he thinks that, how would I say it? Maybe everything's supposed to be noisy or cantankerous with him. Maybe he wants to bring on another set of people to cuss with us so he can be glorified. But you see, it doesn't happen that way when people are about to suffer. It doesn't happen that way, Palarep. It doesn't happen that way. I'm speaking to you tonight. This is not about me cussing you out or telling you anything personal. You are a public figure. That's what you are. a public figure, and the people of the Wesley constituency voted you in, Palare. And not for nothing. You can't prove me wrong just one time. Not for nothing. People lose their land. You're not there. People lose their homes. You're not there. People's children have to run away. You're not there. Where are you? What is our worth in Wesley, Palare? I ask you the question. I know you're listening. I also know the Prime Minister, if he's sleeping, somebody listening for him or recording for tomorrow to play to you. Mr. PM, I consider you a young man. I respect you. Oh yes, I do. I respect you. You're the Prime Minister of Dominica. But I'll tell you, what you are doing is very wrong where West people are concerned. Why do you lie? Why do you try to fool Wesley people? Why? Why do you do those things? Why do you and the Palare from Wesley continue to put us in that hole? You see, Dominica has, or Wesley in particular, has a breed of people who found it necessary to get educated. They found it necessary to practice common sense. So, in all your maneuvering, in all your, how they say it, they have this thing in your nasty business. We still stand strong and we can decipher the garbage you're putting on the people of Wesley. My people from Wesley, whether you are labor rights or freedom rights or UWP, whatever the case is, right now we are backing up a war that is not so smooth. Some of us are over 50. My birthday was yesterday. According to the Bible, I have about 18 more years to live. What do I do? What do I tell my kids? Do I get old and tell my kids, well, the Palare didn't help me? My brother, I don't want you to help me to do anything. The reason why you are in that position is to better the avenue for every young person to come forward. Coming forward, sons and daughters, that is the song. Prepare the groundwork for young people to come forward, Palare. That is what you are there for. You are not there to drive through the village under your darkers, go by your family, and you disappear. That is what you do on a regular basis. I sit there on my free time and I look at you. I look at your behavior, your disposition. It is very poor. You cannot create enemy or enmity among your constituents. That is what you're doing. That's what you're doing. You lie, you lie, you lie to the people of Wesley. I don't know why, but you do it. And you see where we are now? Where we are now is no good place. No good place. All because of you and your leader. So today and tonight, we have to come out here tonight to defend Wesley. Well, I want to tell you something before I go. I don't know if I'll have any more time to come on, maybe just to say goodbye. But let me tell you before I go. I'm a born and bred Wesley man. My kids are in Wesley. I don't know, but I think every one of us here can leave and go away. Every single one of us here can leave and go as far as the US. That is an activity you cannot stop. But I want to tell you tonight here, I'm a born and bred Wesley man. I'm a Dominican. I'll tell you, I make up my mind, Mr. Palare and Mr. PM, to stand. And to stand, I will stand for my community. I just cannot stay one place and see it happen. Look at the amount of truck owners we have in the Northeast catchment. How many of them you employ sensibly? How many? Look at the amount of people who invested in excavators in the last 10, 15, 20 years. How many of them you employed? Tell Dominica that. Look at the amount of shops that are closing down. There's no money. You say you have $1.3 billion spending in Wesley area. And if you drive from Concord or even Atkinson, go all the way down to Benz, there's no activity. There's nothing. You have 1 or 2 people working on the site with them still, and the money is still limited. Look now, they are bringing in over 1,000 Asians to this community. What does that tell me? It tells me that sooner or later, all the people working right now may be marginalized. I'm smart enough to see it coming. Over 1,000 Asians are going to come in that area. To do what? We don't know. Because, one, our Prime Minister is yet to come and sit down and have a sensible conversation. He did come and eat the road, you know. But what do you think he did? He came in his base, and then he came back to the nation and tell the nation he spoke to X amount of people, X amount of percentage of people in Wesley. It's a lie. It's a big fat lie. PM, you have never come to Wesley to have any conversation with Wesley people. You went to people that will tell you, yes, that's what you did. And then you make your move. And the move you made, some of them benefited. Yes, if you go up to the buildings up there, you can see them one by one. Those are people who supported the government. You know? So they give them a house. It's okay. Because at the end of the day, you still haven't empowered them. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And then you have people like Mr. David and others who invested their money in their homes, and you have them dragging along. And it's like you're happy. It's like you're happy you're making people life miserable. That's how I see it, you know. That's how I see it. So tonight, I just taken advantage of this situation here to speak on behalf of my village, Mr. G. You see me? I am proud of my village. I'm proud of my people in Wesley. I mean, we're talking about Wesley alone. Woodford Hill. Look now, they put in an asphalt plant down there in the ending of Wesley. When the breeze take that thing and go over, the people of Woodford Hill will suffer too. It's just 2 valleys away, you know. Just 2 valleys away. So you see, Woodford Hill will get affected. Wesley is already affected. Look at the dust. You have all them small kids in a school over there. And every day, if any one of us go over there and stand up, we have to run fast, as long as the day is drying up. And those kids have to stay in that school for how many hours, pumping in that dust? 5 years, 10 years down the road, we're going to have sick people in Wesley. So once again, before I go, Mr. Paller, you need to come out on that high horse you're riding and come down and talk to people in Wesley and bring the Prime Minister with you. Let us question you guys and get answers. That's what I'll go for tonight. That's what I need to see happen. And pay people properly. You cannot pay me for property, and when I don't pay back, I don't have nothing. I'm going to become a poor person. Right. Or you cannot, I don't like what happened. So, like the other panelists have said, we need to. At this point, this might be the last night for talking. You hear? This might be the last night for talking, because we're talking now. Since 2019, we've been talking. Yes, we've been talking since 2019. And it is above us now. It's too much. Too much. And you have another race of people coming in your face and telling you the land is theirs. They pay for the land already, and they're not supposed to come in Dominica and get any problem. That is what is making me want to wonder what they're really building down there. That is my question mark. Yes, Mr. G, they come right in Bottom Wesley to run somebody in their dwelling home where they were staying. To run them. And there's a Chinese man, I can call his name. His name is Mr. Ming, a tough one. He's one of the head honcho down there. And you remember that guy, Will? I can't remember the guy with the, when the PM had come by the batching plant down there, they had this Arab guy or Persian guy, Carl. He had the boreholes plan and whatever. That guy was a member of the bunch. It was 5 of them. It was 2 Arab guys and 3 Chinese. I was there. And they made it clear the land belonged to them. And they tell the young lady, move from the house, we build a house for you up there. We're not supposed to come here and get any problem. The man spoke with authority. With authority. There was another case where they came in Palm Tree by Mr. Pioche and pick mangoes. That time, they were building the health center down there. And there was a woman. And the woman told my auntie in front of her husband and myself and my madam, the land is theirs. There's nothing you can do about it. The land belongs to us. Go and ask your prime minister. That's why lady said, you know. But in the end, she made a statement. I don't think she wanted to, I guess maybe language barrier. She said, your prime minister is a trickster. I think she wanted to say, your prime minister trick you. You understand me? That's what she said. She didn't, you can see her profile was higher than the others because the way they reacted to her, she was somebody above. When she said that, for a second there, I was like, what? You understand me? So these are the things, because things happening down there, and you cannot put a lid on it to say, I'm not no contractor, but you cannot put a lid on it to say exactly that is that. That is what's going to happen. Because nobody in governance can find the time, never found the time to come here and have an amicable conversation with the people of Western. So right now, we just left to be speculating, and that is not good. So once again, Mr. Palarap, you need to come Wesley and have a proper conversation with Wesley people together with the Prime Minister and whoever else. Let me question all you. That's what I'll go now.
All right, Clint, appreciate that. Well, let's hear you because we have to start winding down. And, somebody's mic is open. Maybe
mic is on.
Give me your mic. All right. So, yes, well.
All right. Good night again. Well, yeah, I see we practically out of time. See, we need more time because there are a lot that can be said on this project. But I want to just re-emphasize, and I know TC said it earlier on, that airport could come right under our nose, and we don't see the kind of financial benefit and economic benefit from that airport. I mean, I was in Wesley in September last year, and with a $1.3 billion project going on, I did not see any impact. The place was looking dread. Not during the day or in the night on the weekend, the place was dread. You would think for a project of this nature, the Wesley should be buzzing. We should have people from Grand Bay and La Plaine like they did when the Banana Revolution. That's what we had. A lot of people from different communities were in Wesley. The airport project is going on and Wesley is still dread. So for people to think we should be so hopeful, put about take the dust, don't worry about payment for the land, just take in everything, because when airport comes, your life is just going to be so wonderful. I'm not buying that. Mr. G, airport has always been close to us. Think about that. How many guest houses, how many projects have we got? Just think about Wesley Margot area as a result of airport there. I'm not saying the airport, I'm not saying that because I'm against airport. I'm for to build the airport, right? But I'm just saying for people to think we in Wesley area, they're gonna just see a transformation with guest houses and hotels and everything because an international airport coming. We might be in for a big surprise. Just think about where these places are right now. And we have always been close to the airport. Let us think about that. You know, and when we had that very first meeting on the 4 road, one of the things we said, I know I said that specifically, prepare people, train people. Mr. Palrep, you're in the position of the government, give people maybe some grants or get them to study, prepare, not just for driving. We have some guys are driving, some guys from West AC driving the trucks. There are other technical parts on this project. You could train a soil technician in a few months. It don't take that long for people for Wesley people to be employed. We're not dull people. We have a lot of brilliant people all over the place. There are a lot of guys in Dominica, top guys in Dominica that live in Roseau, and some people think they're from Roseau, and a lot of them from Wesley and the Northeast, doing a lot of good things. We could have trained people and prepared them for this thing, but these guys don't care about that. Those people, this administration does not seem to care about the empowerment of people. If you're going to have a project, you know you were planning that years ago. Train people. Get them prepared. You have foreigners coming in, like doing jobs that Dominicans could do, and not just Wesley people, but Dominicans can do. When you look at the project in St. Vincent, the Argyle Airport, it's a completely different picture. They a lot of local people working. When they have technical work that they need some more skilled people to do, they'll bring them in. But that's not the case you see in there. You have a project right under one nose going on, and you're not gonna see, you're not seeing the economic benefit. I hope that changes. The other thing too, while we're there, I looked at, and I'll tell everybody listening, when you get a chance, go on Facebook, look at MMC page, and scroll through that thing. I mean, I was like, my goodness, this guy really, really control Dominica. You could even call him Dominica or Mr. Dominica. You scroll through that, even a hard cut, MMC, housing development, Penfield, Lacklane, health centers, MMC. I mean, it's like this guy controls Dominica. Those are things. We have guys that leave Wesley working on all kind of big projects, not just Wesley, but Dominica, working on all kind of big projects in the US and all other places around the world. If we train our people, the benefit from that airport will be multiplied, and Dominica could have been a changed place economically, and everybody, maybe people will be migrating back to Dominica. Repatriation, because of the amount of money that will be spent in the small population. But because of how this whole system is set up, we're not going to see that. So I'm telling my people, take the maximum benefit for your land, take all what you can get, because look at what happened to this guy. Look at how much wealth they acquired over that short period of time. Do not shortchange yourself. Stand up for yourself and take all the benefits that you can get. Do not make them underpay you. And people need to stand up. And our representative, people say enough already. I had work on other groups and trying to work with this guy. And I can say we essentially have no representation. And I will stop here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Wilwood. Appreciate that. I want to go to Jean for your final comments, because we're starting to wind up now. Are you with us? Yes, I think you are. I think your mic is off now, so you should be. Your mic is on now, so you should be okay. We're not hearing you though. We're not hearing you. Your audio is not coming through. So okay, so if you can get that fixed up. So while you're getting that fixed up, I'll go over to Pastor Robin, to make your sort of your closing remarks. Your mic is muted, so you might want to.
I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say, but I will just say this in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, because I believe there comes a time when speech is no longer necessary. I believe there comes a time when we have to translate from just an idea to action. I happened to be at the Dominica Grammar School in 1979. That was my last year at the Dominica Grammar School, when our country was going through tremendous pain. And a lot of it was concentrated in the North. If you guys remember that the North seemed to be the central focus in a lot of things. And in 1979, it was no different. When our lands were supposed to be taken and given to Mr. Don Pearson for a free port in the Northeast. And while at the same time, we were having issues with our bananas going through the leaf spot disease. And it so happened that at the time that one of our very own, Mr. Elford Henry, was at the center of this whole focus. And it was people like Mr. Atherton Martin and Brian Alleyne and some of those guys who were prominent figures in those times, who actually brought the issue to the forefront. And the first set of people to stand up and to retaliate were the students. The students were the catalyst for the change during that time. And I remember I was a prefect at the Dominica Grammar School, and I led my group of students from the Dominica Grammar School to hit the streets. And our chant was, "Dump DBGA, not the farmers. Dump DBGA, not bananas." As children of farmers took to the streets because we were disgusted about what was really happening. And following that was the 42-day strike, when the civil service decided that enough was enough. And the action led to the downfall of the then administration. So I believe from that time, I consider myself to be an activist, a negmawo, kind of person who will not just sit by and not engage when things are going the contrary, when things are not being done in a transparent and fair way. I believe if a people are being disenfranchised, if a people are being marginalized, if a people are being taken advantage of, those of us who have better sense about what is happening need to step to the forefront, irrespective of how we are perceived. So, going out, I would say this in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King: now is not the time to engage in the luxury of cooling out, or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. but it's time for us to translate into action what we know to be true. Because if we don't stand up, for this generation, and if we don't come to the forefront with the fervor and urgency of the hour, we will live to regret our non-action. I believe this is the time when we need to send a very clear message from the community of Wesley that we are fed up with the way that we've been treated, and we are prepared to take a stand. And if Wesley is going to be the focal point for the remaining time of the year, we will not, and I repeat, we will not just sit idly by and engage in talking and do nothing, because this is way too much on our people. I thank you so much, Mr. G and Q95, for giving us the opportunity to express our hearts and to speak freely of how we feel. And I know we speak for a lot of the people of this community who may be afraid to come into the public's view and to speak for themselves. And so tonight, I am very satisfied that I've spoken on behalf of the elderly and the children and the disenfranchised and the people who are afraid to speak up for themselves. Thank you so very much for this.
You're very, very welcome, Pastor Robin. Excellent. Now I want to go to TC and then I'll go to Jenna for his final remarks. But TC, one of the things that struck me is that the name Elford Henry came up a few times. I mean, obviously, we didn't spend enough time talking about that 6% that is accumulating on the people's money that is owed to them, but we take that for granted. That's a part of the law. But I heard the name Elford Henry, and then when I listened to what was said about the other location, that I think it was the United Workers' Party, yes, that wanted to do this airport. And it just reminded me that every single person who owned land that had to be acquired for that purpose was paid. And why I remember that, because it is remarkable that Elford Henry was the very last person who got paid for his property. You know why? Because Elford was resisting. He did not want to move. I remember one day Elford Henry paid, he got paid, he said, look, he'll take his check. He was so every single person who had land in that area that was acquired was paid. And up to today, I've never heard anybody give any indication that they felt that they were underpaid, that the land was undervalued. What struck me most, in fact, it was when the Londonderry estate was purchased, the attorney representing the Laville family, he said that, he was very satisfied with the expeditious manner in which his clients received their money. So that is a clear contrast to what is happening now. So TC, your final words. You can unmute your mic.
First, I want to say thank you for giving us this platform so that we could voice our concern about what's going on in our community. I find it interesting that, as you mentioned, when the initial location was selected for purchase by the former administration, that there were people who were against that airport being built in that location. And they rallied, and I understand they had black candles up there. I wasn't around at the time. But there was a fight to prevent that from happening. Nonetheless, as you mentioned up there, everybody who had property got paid or compensated in some way. And as I said on the onset, this is an indication that what is going on in Wesley right now has been a totally unplanned adventure. And it's nothing but an adventure. There has been no formal planning of what's going on. It's been a hit and miss. because it's impossible for you to tell me that you are on property building a project while you have people living in the middle of that project. That cannot be a planned process. As the other panelists have said, we have talked enough, we have spoken enough, we have given our all as far as letting the public know, letting public officials know where we stand, what we will stand for, what we will no longer stand for. And the time of talking has to come to an end. And so we have, from the onset, one of the panelists mentioned since 2019, I think it was mentioned. I know from 2020, we've been talking about this. And we still see what we predicted was going to happen is happening. And still no one has, I mean, after the last meeting, it seemed after our first meeting that the PM thought that, oh, let me go find some money to quiet these guys, and came up with 15 million from God knows where. Priorities and what has to come first, and Erica and Maria, and those are the things that you should have been thinking about before you put a plan in place to build an airport. That's how you prioritize. You don't decide I'm going to build an airport and then say, well, what else I need to do in the middle of this? Very, very poor management. I know what managing big things are. I know what it is to manage something big. I used to manage from Guam to Diego Garcia, a little rock in the Indian Ocean. Everything in between, I was in charge of it. Thousands of people. So I know what it is to manage equipment and people and projects. And what is going on here is just ridiculous. And so we cannot just keep talking about it. There has to come a point where action has to follow. And I think we've arrived at a point where people can no longer put up with the frustration that's been dealt to us in this community. And I said on the platform the other day, it's interesting that there are people that are getting victimized right now, and yet they are afraid to speak because they think that if they speak, they're going to get victimized. It doesn't add up. At some point, you have to get up and you have to speak, and you have to make people be aware of your victimization and what you're suffering. You cannot always be silent. You cannot remain silent when you're getting pressure. So the point has come, I think, where we have tried our best to educate. We've tried our best to pass the knowledge that we have, the foresight that we have in different areas to the people. And for those that wanted to listen, it's increasing. The numbers are increasing, but we have to move on from there. And I think that's where we are right now, that we have to move to the next level. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, TC. Now I can go to Dr. Andrew. I can go to Jenna. I know Dr. Andrew has to leave at some point. Dr. Andrew, would you like me to take your remarks now, or should I go to Jenna and then take you last?
Okay, go to Jenna.
All right. So Jenna, let's talk about this. I mean, you've been spearheading a lot of this. You've been helping to organize and coordinate. You know, you've been the guy, the strong man behind much of it. Tell us where you stand as we wrap up tonight, and what's the next move, because obviously there has to be a concerted next move that is going to result in the action which you want, which is for people to get paid, to get a better sense of where this thing is going, so the community itself, where they stand in the future once this project is done. In other words, first things first, Jenna.
Thank you again, Mr. G. In closing, and my closing remarks is directed to the Prime Minister himself. Notwithstanding the concerns that we highlighted earlier, we still have questions which we need answers to. We have the Chinese sovereign way up into the village, in the middle of the village. Why are they so far up? We have the asphalt plants being built next to my house. Now, even if I'm out of there by then, but how are we going to address this issue of the toxic fumes, which are going to certainly affect the entire village in a negative way? Our objective, we need the Prime Minister to come out here. Now, I'm saying this because the Carnival is around the corner. Right after Carnival is our action time. In the meantime, you have some time. We need you to come out and have a serious conversation with the people of Wesley, sooner rather than later. Tell us how you intend to get us out of this predicament which you put us in. You have the power to prevent this from escalating. As you have heard from the other panelists, now is action time. They are ready. And we are representing a body of people in Wesley who are also ready. Once again, Mr. G, I want to thank you and Q95 for giving us the opportunity to sit here and have this very, very interesting and important conversation.
Well, Jana, I want to thank you for really coming out and informing the people that are listening to us worldwide, because, you know, I'm sure there are thousands of people who have been with us all throughout this. Your message has gone far and wide. And I believe I never really got a chance to acknowledge all the people who have been on Facebook with us throughout, and some of the comments that they're making, very powerful comments, in many cases, very supportive. And maybe we'll be able to go back afterwards and just take a look. You can do it yourself. Go on Facebook and read some of those comments. It might be of some value and comfort to you. But certainly it was very nice having this conversation tonight. We learned a lot. I certainly learned a lot. I wasn't sure what was going on. Now I have a lot more well informed about what's going on. Dr. Andre, let me give you the final word.
Yeah, once again, let me thank you for inviting me to participate in this discussion. It's a very timely, very important discussion, quite frankly. Let me commend the other panelists who are very much involved, intimately involved in what's happening in Wesley. It's a permanent scar on the face of democracy, and quite frankly, it's a scar that should be removed. Now, I heard one of our presenters indicate that they're waiting for the Prime Minister to come and explain to you. I would suggest that, quite frankly, that you reached this time when it is not so much you should be waiting for the Prime Minister to come explain to you, but the people of Wesley should stand up and demand and march and go to the seat of government to make their views very clear on what has been a disgrace in terms of how Dominicans are treated by their own government. There's no excuse for this, quite frankly. It will not happen in any other country. And I can bet your life it wouldn't happen in China, for God's sakes. So you, the cause of justice is on your side. You have the moral authority. You have the support of one of your own, a pastor. You have the support of the cream of the Wesley crop. And I went to school with some folks from Wesley in the 70s, and they were excellent folk, very bright, very accomplished, worthy Dominicans. So for you to allow yourself to be treated in that fashion, in my view, it says that, quite frankly, the time has come when the folk from Wesley have to stand up and be counted. If they fail to do so, then unfortunately, the children will look back at this dark day of the village's history and say, where were my relatives? Where were my friends? Where were my parents? Where were my family members? Were they simply content to take the two pieces that have been given to them and ignore the plight of their fellow Wesleyans with whom they've interacted for decades? So the choice is clear. There's nothing to think about. There's no mathematical formula to unravel. It is whether or not the people of Wesley are going to protect what is theirs, what their parents owned and their grandparents owned behind them. And as I said, because of the justness of their cause, there will be many Dominicans who will give them the moral, and other support that they require in their hour of need. Now is the time for the folks to be counted, and I hope that they see that it is only through their collective efforts that there can be salvation for the proud village of Wesley. Thank you very much. Thank you to your listeners. And thank you once again to Canaan F5 and Lambi and Sherwin and others who've made this program possible this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andre. I mean, what a way to wrap it up. I really want to thank all of the panelists, Pastor Robin, Clint, Wilworth, Jenna, you've done so much. Dr. TC, Jean, Francois, and everybody who was with us here tonight. And not only you on the panel with us, but the people who called us. Obviously, they're caretaker, they're concerned enough, particularly nurse who called with so much pain and agony in her voice. You can see how she's hurt by what is happening. Many people are hurt, but they're afraid to speak. So you are their voice, really. And you did a good job, an excellent job of speaking for them tonight. I want to also shout out and thank all the people on Facebook still there with us on Facebook and on YouTube and many other platforms. Sorry that we could not read out your messages, but we will take the time and go through them again and assess them and cherish them when we have a moment. Not now during the show because we've come to the end. So, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you and good night to everybody. Jenna, thank you for the work that you guys are doing, Pastor and Wilworth, everybody, Clint. Everything that you all are doing is great for the community, and I hope the community stands behind you solidly in whatever action you decide to undertake in order to bring the fullest benefits to all of the people of the Wesley community and the surrounding areas. So thank you very much, gentlemen. And let me just say good night to everybody. Good night, Lambi. Good night, Sherwin. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.
Thank you very much, and good night to your panelists and to your listeners.
If there's anything further we can do,
everybody.
Don't be afraid to contact us. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Helping to put this together too. Ireland and Canada.
All right. And a good shout out to all the Robin family that's listening, I'm sure. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Oh, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na.